We're sitting here at 15 Perry Street in our studio, and today's another new podcast on the Mentors Military, and I got my sidekick, Paul Martinez, helping co-host.
Hey, everybody.
So we have Matt with us today. Matt, thanks so much for coming to the Mentors Military podcast, and especially traveling all the way from Denver.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We're going to, go down a couple different ways. We were having a conversation prior to this, actually we go back. We went to dinner and stuff last night and had a good time there and had a lot of conversations. I had to stop the conversation on a couple occasions because we didn't want to cover too much before today, because then it'll be...
What are we going to talk about?
We're just rehash stuff, and it wouldn't be quite as exciting. But we got down the whole discussion of our aches and pains this morning, and I think there's a lot of people that probably are dealing with a lot of the different, traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress, and we cover this a lot. But then there's these just ailments. And Paul, you were talking about, just the nerves, and how it was affecting different things like your eyesight.
Yeah, I stopped shooting long range or through any kind of weapon with an optic with my right eye because I couldn't see. I couldn't acquire a sight picture after about 30 to 45 seconds. And I thought, okay, well, too many knocks on the head. I'm just old and shitty. Yeah. So I would shoot left-handed, and that's fine, Turns out there's nothing wrong with my eyes. I have a nerve in my shoulder that's attached to the muscles in my eye or the optic nerve. I don't know. I'm a meat eater. And I got that worked on to make my shoulder feel better. And I was like, this is the same thing I experience when I'm laying in the prone and I've got a rifle in my pocket, in my shoulder pocket. And then my vision starts to get blurry.
And it's funny because on my last trip over, that was one of the things I started to experience after getting too many blasts to the head myself on that trip.
Oh, really? The same thing with the
eyes. Yeah, I had a huge problem. I had a huge problem overlaying my red dot onto my target. And at first I wasn't even noticing what was happening, but I was going back and forth between my eyes trying to get one on the target and one off, and I shoot both eyes open. And so it's just really weird for me not to be able to get that overlay. And then I found out the same thing. And then I told you, I went in and I got dry needling, changed my life.
Yeah, that's the next step for me too, is to get dry needled because they couldn't do it with the manual stimulation they were doing. So your dominant eye wasn't able to do what your dominant eye is supposed to do.
Right.
So did you come up with a workaround in the meantime? Or you just
no, because we were running night ops, and so I was just
you just point and click. Yeah, that's a good interface. Yeah, if you don't know and you're listening, the magic of night vision and lasers on your weapons is you press the button, and if your laser is properly sighted to that weapon, whatever that dot is on, that's where the bullet should go roughly. So it changes things at night. It's almost.
And I was fortunate enough to have a nice spot out to about 200 where I could get my what do we call them, LA5s. I can get my LA5 zeroed in nice.
So you had a real good long range.
Well, it's it's funny is the last guys I took out actually wasn't even long range. It was maybe 50 yards away, 50 meters away, roughly, and they were fixing to set up an L shape on us.
Nice.
And it was weird because we had the guys dropping the IED in front, and so we had kind of halted movement because they were digging it on the road. And my commander at the time he's thinking, well, maybe we ought to just call in an airstrike on these guys. And I'm thinking to myself as I'm sitting there, I was like, dude, unleash the dogs, man. Let's just go up there and walk up and schwack these dudes so we can move on to the objective.
Yeah.
It's nothing. Not to mention, you don't want to drop an airstrike that close,
No.
Absolutely don't want to be.
Well, then you have to move. They're going to get tipped off because it's hard to move.
It's just a pain in the ass. So as these guys are laying in the IED in front of us, I noticed off to our right flank, I just noticed a light pop up.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, shit, they shouldn't be there, because we had already done a big clearance out behind. Light pops up, and then another one, and then another one. And I see these four guys start emerging and moving online. And I looked at my buddy, and I was like, hey, man, you want to smoke these guys real quick? And he's like, I don't want to open up right now because of the weapon system he was on. And the military is really finicky about us talking about what weapon systems we were shooting at the time.
Gotcha.
So he's like, no, I don't want to open up at this one and give away what we got. And I was like, that's fair, dude. That's fair. And so
smart.
So I just waited and then just popped them. I got uncomfortable after a while with how close they were getting. I was like, nah, just dropped a couple of them, and then they just kind of disappeared. And then we sent forward some Afghans, and they took care of the guys on the road for us.
Nice. Yeah. That's interesting. That's really interesting. So they knew where you were, or roughly?
They knew we were coming because we were doing a clearing operation, and we had an actual objective at the end that they probably figured out that we were coming for.
Okay.
And so, they were going to defend that at all costs.
Okay, I gotcha. So they didn't necessarily know you were there, but they knew you were going to be there.
They knew we were coming. Well, it was a multi-day operation. So the first day we did our shaping up to it just in order to penetrate as far as we did. So they knew it was coming.
Yeah. Man, that's awesome. I think it's funny because I think a lot of times the go-to, and I've seen this on the ground, people hire, whatever you want to call them, whether it's hires on boots on the ground or hires up in the talk. They're like, oh, well, we've got this air asset. And it's like, we're within 100 to 200 meters. We got guns. Like guns still shoot bullets.
Yeah.
Like, just let us do what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. And it adds this level of complexity into it. And sometimes it's the right call, but most of the time I'm just thinking like, what are we here for then?
Sometimes it's the right call. Sometimes it's the wrong call. Like I also had a time where I was moving forward on an assault, and my commander had halted me, and he's like, Matt, he's like, are you behind cover? I'm like, yeah, man, I'm behind cover.
Yeah.
Are we doing okay? I was like, yeah, man, I'm behind cover. And he's like, all right, well, stay down. And before I know it, I'm getting covered in freaking moon dust and took a shock to the freaking face.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, what the hell are you dropping on? Why are you dropping right now? Like, I haven't heard you call out enemy positions. I haven't heard you call out shit. And yet you're dropping ordnance danger close to me. Like, why are you dropping 500-pound bombs from a supersonic aircraft danger close on your lead assault element without telling me there's enemy position, like enemy nearby, like anything going on? You just tell me to get behind cover. Like, that's kind of jacked up, man. I kind of feel like I should know what's going on.
It'd be nice
as
to
the
be
assault leader, right? Like, if you could tell me what's happening, that'd be great. And turns out he's just dropping on an enemy position or a fighting position.
Okay.
Not even enemies in there. They had squirted as we were moving close. And he had called that out maybe like an hour before. I was like, dude, whatever. We've been schwacking dudes all day. Like, let it be.
Yeah. Like, man. I don't know. I mean, some people just want to blow some shit up, and I can't blame them for that. But it's nice to know if the world around you is going to explode. Like, it's nice to have a heads up about why.
Oh, yeah.
And how much of it's going to explode.
Yeah.
And, how long I need to keep my head down.
Yeah. If you haven't seen like a B-52 unleash, it's like unholy hell. Like, dude, it's great. Watching him just Winchester a load of like 28 500-pound bombs is just.
I have not seen that.
It's
I
great.
have definitely not seen that.
I'm telling you right now, it is phenomenal.
That sounds biblical, man.
It is.
Yeah, it definitely does, especially when you paint the picture of that whole thing. I'm curious, you started out in Portland, and yet, you end up in different places now, obviously, because of your military career. But when you came out of Portland and stuff, at that time frame, what were you kind of thinking about coming into the military? What was the thing that led you into the military? Was it service? Was it college money? Or
no, it was none of that. So I had two older brothers that went in the Marines before I did.
Oh, okay.
And so I always wanted to be in the Marines. I was like, I'm going to be a jarhead just like my older brothers. And right before I went to go down to sign up for the Marines, like down in MEPS, I had grown up this country lifestyle, so I took my 20 gauge out to a railroad tracks to go shoot some birds, and I didn't have air pro in. Shot my 20 gauge off a couple times, and the ring didn't go away by the time I had gone to MEPS. And so the Marine Corps DQ'd me, and they're like, nope, we don't want you. I was just brokenhearted, so I tried doing a waiver and everything else. The Marines were like, nope, sorry, bud, you're off the table.
The Marine Corps DQ'd you. That's interesting.
Isn't that sad?
Yeah, I mean, seriously, I can remember, in my days of recruiting where guys that we would DQ, the Marines could just give a physical test, and then they would go.
Right.
And if they didn't pass the mental and all of that. But so it is kind of interesting.
So it is. It's really interesting that the Marines no-go'd me for that, especially when you look at you fast forward to the time of the surge and stuff. I had dudes that did coke 3 times in a row, and we wouldn't kick out. We just bust them down to E1, and they would just stay there until we got tired of them. Wow. And it didn't matter. It didn't we didn't care because we just wanted people.
Mm-hmm. So, what year were you trying to get into the Marine Corps?
02.
02. Yeah, I had a similar experience. I tried to join, and they said I was not educated enough because I dropped out of high school and I just had my GED.
Really?
And I'm like, that doesn't.
This is early GY days too, so.
I mean, it was 2006.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know. I mean, they're.
What's funny is if you'd have gone back to them a year later, they'd have probably been okay with it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, it is.
Standard change.
So you couldn't go Marines, so you decided to go Army. And
No, I wrote that. So when I couldn't go Marines, I was volunteering at a fire department, and they had given me what do you call it when they pay for college? What's that?
like college tuition?
College tuition
Yeah.
assistance, whatever,
Yeah.
scholarship.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So I'd intern at the fire department, and they'd pay my way through college. So I did that for a whole semester, and I was like, I can't do this shit. This is just, I can't. Why? And I'm just banging my head on the table like, this is horrible. I hate this. Because I also had, while I did get a little bit of money from the fire department and going to college, it definitely, and I stayed at the fire station, and then I would go to school, but it wasn't enough to live off of. So I also had a job on top of that. So I was doing
That's tough.
internship, college, and a job. And my sleep would happen at the fire department. And if I was able to sleep through the night, I'd feel okay.
Yeah.
But I'd get woken up a lot, and I wouldn't be able to sleep through the night. And God forbid they like pick you to jump on an ambulance and ride to the hospital, because now you got to wait on a ride back to the department. I just lost even more sleep. So I had called my mom one day. I had called my mom, and she was like, "Well, why don't you just try going into the Army?" I was like, "Those guys are a bunch of freaking retards. I don't want to be in the Army."
Damn.
You know, that's
fair.
Well, and I was drinking the Marine Corps Kool-Aid at the time, you know?
yeah.
And
Now, was your father, when your whole family, obviously here, 3 brothers, 3 sons have gone into the service and stuff. Was this something that your family? No. Okay.
No. My dad left home when I was wee little. My folks got divorced, and I had a stepdad that came in, never served. And my dad was a mailman by trade, and he was kind of a horrible human being. But we're not going to get on that subject.
Yeah.
He was kind of a horrible human being. So I never really respected or grew up with him at all. And so, it was just something that my brothers and I ultimately just, I don't know, we took interest in it. We just wanted to do it. And when my older brother, when he came back from boot camp, he was sitting out in his truck, like eating an MRE one day. And I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And looking back now, I was like, why the hell would you be eating that?
Yeah, you know? We don't have to.
Use that truck to drive to get real food.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, yeah.
But yeah, so my mom was like, yeah, give the Army a try. Why don't you see about the Army? I was like, all right, I'll do that. I was like, I don't even know what I would do in the Army. And so I signed up not really knowing anything about the Army whatsoever, and I signed up on an 11 X-ray contract, which I didn't even know that when you sign up on an 11X contract, you may be infantry or you may be indirect fire infantry, like a mortarman. I didn't know that was a thing. And when I just thought I was going to show up and shoot guns and kick in doors and do all that fun stuff.
Yeah, we've had this conversation a lot because the path that Chris Van Sant,
Me?
was it Lee? No, not Lee.
They tried to get him.
Yeah, they tried to get him. That's right. And he was able to talk his way out. But there's been so many that's come through those same doors that ended up going 11 Charlie, 11 Mike, and they thought they were going,
Yeah, it was the
11
weirdest
Bravo
thing. I was just standing in line for chow, and the drill sergeants came out, and they were like, everybody from here, take one step back, and just knife-handed this entire, 800-man formation and separated us, and I had made it by, 2 ranks. And I was like, what the hell just happened? And they're like, well, everybody behind us is 11 Charlie. We're 11 Bravos. I was like, I don't know what the difference is.
Yeah.
So how did you end up going to 11 X-ray in the first place? Is it because the guidance counselor just thought because you're going, you wanted to go Marine Corps, that meant you obviously wanted to go infantry? Or
No, so I was out fishing with my stepdad. We were out fishing one day, and I was like, yeah, I like guns. He was like, well, why don't you just look at the infantry? I was like, well, I don't know what that is, but yeah, let's take a look at that. So I went and I talked to the counselor or the recruiter, and he's like, yeah, you'll play with guns. That's what you guys do is you play with guns. Like, okay, yeah, sounds like a good time. Let's do that.
Yeah. Man. That's
what was the MOSs of your brothers in the Marine Corps?
One was an engineer. He drove big construction equipment, and the other one was a satellite communication specialist.
Okay, so neither of them were infantrymen themselves.
No, and I think even the SATCOM, my brother that did SATCOM, he got transferred because the Marines do weird things. He got transferred to be a small generator mechanic or something like that.
really,
Yeah.
that's weird.
Right?
It is weird.
The Marine Corps is weird. For those of you listening, I'm sorry. You guys do weird shit.
All right, so you end up going into the infantry. You're at OSA, and you didn't have like an option 40 contract or anything like that at this point. So
No.
airborne, nothing.
So oddly enough, I actually did have airborne in my contract.
Oh, is that something you asked for? Or?
I didn't know it even existed.
Wow,
Really a master of your own fate at this point. in your
I
life.
really was. No, I look back at my youth. I was a really smart kid, and yeah, it was one of those things. Like towards the end of basic training, they were like, "Hey, if you got airborne in your contract, you needed to, come over here." And I was like, "What the hell is airborne?" And they had us open up our contracts, and I was shocked. I remember seeing airborne in my contract. I was like, "So I'm going to jump school now?" They're like, "Yeah."
And you have no idea how that got into your contract.
I had no idea. No.
Wow.
And it's even funnier because the Army told me when I had signed up for it, because that hearing issue was still on the record from the Marines, and they were like, "Look, man, you're not going to do anything cool. You're not going to jump out of airplanes. You're not going to be like special forces. You're not going to do anything like that. If you want to be a ground pounder, that's one thing, but you're not going to get this." And apparently, I walked downstairs and signed an airborne contract right afterwards. So I had no idea.
You probably just signed the wrong stack of paper or something like
Yeah,
that.
whatever. It worked out for me, man. I'm not going to.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
At that moment when you found out that you were going airborne, not knowing too much about it, but that you were going to jump out of planes, what was your initial thought?
Oh, I didn't care.
Yeah.
And like, no, I didn't care. I was like, it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
It's whatever. But honestly, in the back of my heart, I think I was a little upset, because I was going to have some extra time away from home that I wasn't planning on. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I was going to do something fun. So,
yeah. At this point, you didn't know your assignment because...
No, I did.
Oh, you did?
So I got sucked in initially. Yeah, my career's weird. Yeah, so I started off, I got sucked into the honor guard. So I started off actually doing funerals in Arlington.
As a private?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so they had the honor guard recruiter come down to our basic training, and I had, again, this is Matt. Like, I didn't even know I signed up for airborne in my contract. Let's be real here. Like, I was pretty naive, and the guy came out, the honor guard recruiter came out, and he's like, "Look, you guys are the official escort to the president. You guys are going to be doing some great things. You're going to be in Washington, D.C. And he talked it up like we were the Secret Service. You know what I mean? Is basically how he presented it to us. And I was really butthurt when I showed up to my unit after going through infantry training and airborne training, thinking I'm going to go be an escort to the president. And I find out there's a company that's devoted entirely to dressing up like they were from the 1700s, like George Washington's personal escort.
Is that what you did?
Yeah. I showed up and
Did you really? Every day?
I was like, dude, if there is one thing I absolutely don't want to do, it's wear wigs and tights every day. And so,
no joke.
And they sent me to the company that wears wigs and tights. But at the same, so we had what was called like the SIG Guard platoon, right? The Commander in Chief's Guard platoon. Yeah. And they're the ones that was like their primary role. I was in a firing party platoon, so we did the firing parties in Arlington, and then we had like a escort platoon and a casket platoon. In that one company, there's 4 different platoons.
Wow.
And we'd rotate through that. And then the details would also come down to go unload the caskets off the aircraft at Dover as they were coming in from the war.
And you guys did that?
Yeah, we did that. Yeah, quite a few times. And yeah, I mean, it was different.
Yeah.
It was definitely a different start.
Really different.
Well, and I mean, you had to go through the training and everything, just like everybody else, though.
Yeah, it's still, and that's the crazy part is it's still an infantry unit, and so you still have to do like your annual quals and stuff like that. You still got to go through team, squad, platoon live fires and all the other crap while you're at it. So not only are you doing all this ceremonial crap, but then you go out to the field and you're doing
all the
infantry stuff. And you kind of get
infantry stuff.
Yeah, you kind of get a taste of both. Well, it wasn't even modern because we're talking like 03 back then, and so we're running around with LVVs and skull crushers on, you know what I mean, and doing like movement contacts in the woods and stuff like that. Like that was our qualifications back then.
The Cold War stuff.
Yeah, it was all Cold War crap. FM7-8. Like
jeez, man.
So.
Did you ever? They have like a badge, or is that just for those who
the tomb guards?
Okay, so you never got that then?
No, I didn't. I never went to the tomb that was in the tomb guards. I knew a couple of the guys that would go down there, and that's just an intense training process. They have, I think it's like 18 pages that they memorize verbatim that they have to get down on knowledge of everything about Arlington National Cemetery. It's basically like being a brand new cop. You got to pull the graveyard shift. So they're out there. That's when they actually learn to march on the tomb. Is they take them out at nighttime when there's no spectators around, and they'll take them out there. And then they also do I'm sure they don't do this anymore because it's the new Army, but they also used to do like these weird random hazings. And in order to get them to memorize the cemetery, they would have them like they'd give them like 15 minutes to go and get an etching off a tombstone, like a carbon copy etching off of a tombstone. That way they could show like basically like land nav of the cemetery, that they had like that in-depth knowledge of it. So they would send them out to all the
intense.
And their uniforms were just absolute perfection. Absolute perfection. And their arms manual, everything just absolute perfection. As a matter of fact, one of the guys when I first showed up to the unit, Adam Dickmeyer, actually like teach me how to press my uniforms and take care of myself and everything else. And he went on to be a tomb guard down there, and then he went to the 101st and he got later killed. And so he was one of like just a couple tomb guards that have been actually killed in combat that are actually buried in Arlington National Cemetery. And going to his funeral was actually that was just kind of one of those odd experiences to where like we had like all the tomb guards who showed up and they were his honorary casket bearers, and like it was pretty cool. It was pretty special. So
do those guys like that duty generally? I mean, obviously everybody's different, but the guys you talked to that were tomb guards, like.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I suppose it's like any other, specialty field that you can look at in the military. Like guys that want to do that stuff, like you really want to do it, and they take great pride in it. They're always, they wear those aviator sunglasses, the tomb guard glasses, and like you'll see the tomb guards out in town because they'll have their cool guy glasses on walking around. Yeah.
So you dressed up just in the 1700 stuff like once a year? You guys had to go through that, or was it more frequent?
Oh God. I honestly don't remember how frequent it was. I mean, at least
I never even heard
at least once a month. Yeah, at least once. At least once a month for like ceremonies. Yeah, because I mean, we had muskets, and like you'd have to like go and you'd take like steel wool and shine the barrel of your musket, brasso,
like relive the Battle of Gettysburg or something.
Yeah, all the time. Okay. Yeah, as a matter of fact, there was a what was it? George Washington's place. We'd go and do like a firing demo.
Really?
Like every year on like George Washington's property. Mount Vernon.
Okay.
Mount Vernon. We do like a Mount Vernon firing demo. And like the company would go up there and do a firing demo once a year. So I did that, I think, once or twice.
Who would you do
the public?
The public.
The public, because like the public goes up there and they visit the house of George Washington and they go and check out all these different things.
So they're wanting to see, movement to contact based on that era.
Yeah.
And the actors are active duty soldiers.
Yes.
I never would have.
And I don't even think people knew that.
No.
I don't even think
they probably thought they were reenactors.
Yeah.
I guess technically.
Right.
So, like musket battle drills?
I know.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, no, that's not a joke. Yeah, no, I do. No it's really creepy. Yeah, so everybody knows like infantry guys, like we know like Baron Friedrich von Steuben, right? Like he's always brought up and all the things. Yeah, no, we studied his stuff. Like that's what we trained on.
That
was like
elaborate.
the arms manual and the battle drills, if you will, of like the 1700s.
How odd is this? I mean, like, you take an individual, again, coming off the streets, coming into the Army, especially someone like Matt, who's not expecting or knowing anything about the infantry, or let alone airborne. You're thinking you're going to get assigned to 82nd, 173rd, maybe an airborne unit or something of that nature. And instead, you go play dress up 1700 Army style.
Yeah, that happened.
I didn't know this was a conversation I could have.
I didn't know
that this was in the realm of possibility.
Thank God we didn't talk about this last night because this is too damn good.
Yeah, right? Like bringing me in, you did not expect to have a combo. Yeah.
No. And why the hell did they airborne qualify you?
They
didn't even have airborne.
Yeah, no idea.
What that is?
It's nobody ever said the Army was filled with bright people, and I think we all know like the one thing the military is horrible at is paperwork.
That's true. Yeah. That's amazing. It raises so many questions.
If I would have gone up there and seen this event, I never would have guessed that anybody wearing those uniforms are active duty military. Maybe a few, just because those are the ones that's going to interact with the public and they want it to be a little bit. So maybe a handful or something like that. But the rest of them would be just local volunteers because there are civilians who do this all the time.
Right.
Now, do those guys, the civilian reenactors, are they big fans of yours? Or did you interact with them at all? Or?
That's a good question. No, I don't.
You never autographed any pictures or anything?
Like this is never something that anybody has ever wanted to know about my military career. So it's actually nice to kind of just unload this on you guys.
But you're going to have some dude that's listening to this podcast that's going to get put in this situation and he's going to go, damn it.
I remember.
Watch out. What the hell? I thought I was getting an airborne contract then,
Yeah. So, well, if you're going to the recruiter, look out. There's one more thing you got to make sure you don't.
Right.
You don't get sent to.
And what's worse is everybody's like infantryman.
Yeah.
You know, like that's in that unit. And so right. So a lot of guys get like discouraged and going from there. They're like, man, I'll never make it in a regular infantry unit after this because it's nothing like this. And so there's this huge stigma that actually floats around that unit of guys that want to get out because they'll make E5 while they're there.
Yeah.
And then they'll be like, well, shit, now I got to go to a real infantry unit. I got to be real infantryman after this. And they're scared.
But you guys don't deploy either while you're there?
They did.
Oh, they did?
They did. I actually did a rotation with them over to East Africa.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so
what were you doing there? Like
FID.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you bring your musket?
No, I wish. Oh, that'd have been great, man. Like fixed bayonets on some skinnies. Yeah, that'd been a good time.
Man.
Wow. Yeah, I just wouldn't have thought that you would have even deployed just because of the fact that you're not getting an opportunity to really be an infantryman, all the time. And
right. So,
well, they are being infantrymen.
Well, they are, but in a different era.
They're just old school.
You're right.
Yeah.
300 years earlier.
Just doing that vintage stuff, man.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's just crazy. So how long did you end up staying there? Like 3 years?
4 years.
4 years?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
I would hope that'd be like an 18-month assignment.
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah.
But it takes a while to perfect that stuff.
Yeah.
And you really, and it is a very important job. Like I remember we were getting ready to do an active duty funeral one time, and we had all the guys that were sitting around because we're waiting on like the family. So you'll end up doing funerals, if you're on a funeral rotation, and your companies will rotate through who's like on primary for the cemetery. And when you're in primary for the cemetery, you spend all day doing funerals. If you're doing full honors funerals, you can go up to do 4 a day. If you're doing standard honors funerals for the day, you can do 6 to 8, over the course of a day. And so it really does take up your whole time. So you get downtime in between. And so we were more or less on our lunch break in between the morning and the afternoon, and we had an active duty Green Beret that had been killed that we were going to be burying. And we were all kind of like sitting around, and that guy's team actually showed up and talked to us out of nowhere. It was the only time it ever happened. But that guy's team showed up, and he's like, I know it feels like you guys aren't doing anything, and you guys want to get out there, and you want to get in the fight, and you want to go like kick some ass.
Yeah.
He's like, but you're actually doing a really important job.
Yeah.
And that's when it kind of like set in, like, yeah, you actually do want people that are handling this well and professional.
Yeah.
And if I actually put it in later on in my career, I actually had put it in like the specific company and platoons that I wanted bearing me in Arlington if I was an active duty KIA. So it was kind of nice to have that knowledge.
Yeah. You know who was actually going to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're making light of the fact of, wearing the leotards and the whole thing, but let's face it, you had a very respectable, and what you did, was honoring those who had fallen and either past or present. Right. And that was, I'm sure an honor for you to be able to do that as well on a daily basis.
The first time I flew into Dover and was carrying caskets off of a plane, and I remember the first 2 caskets I offloaded were heavy, and then the third one I offloaded was light. And that was one of those oh shit moments.
Yeah.
And some of them are leaking still. I mean, it's a very real thing.
Yeah.
It's a very real thing. And that was also the time when the photos from Dover had spilled out, and the public had lost their shit, and they were like, why aren't we seeing this? Why aren't we allowed to see this?
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that time frame because there was a decision made to no longer share those images, and
that was the feeling of a lot of us that were going on it. Like, it's not something that the public should be allowed to see. Like it really isn't. It's a private military event, much like a ramp ceremony or a closed door memorial service. Like, it's none of your business what's taking place here.
Well, you give me chills. I remember watching a video of a particular soldier, and I don't recall who it was, but the guard that actually goes and drives the vehicle. The individual walks around the back, the ceremony and moves that they make to even open the band doors and, those types of things. And then the troops coming down with the casket. I mean, the ceremonial portions it's crisp, it's respectful. It's to me, it was mind blowing too. Just, the amount of training that you guys go through in order to deliver that ceremony at that moment.
There's a great movie that actually exists, and everybody from like the honor guard knows about this movie because it's James Earl Jones was in it. It was a big movie production that was back in the 80s, and it's called Gardens of Stone. And I watched it while I was in the unit, and I remember looking at it and being like, well, this is kind of stupid because it was set in Vietnam. It's about a guy that shows up. It actually, when I look back at it, it kind of reflects a lot on my life and the way I went about it. There was just this young guy there that's like, I just want to go to war. I just want to go to war. I want to go to war. And he stayed in that unit for so long, but he finally got promoted, got out of the unit, went to Vietnam, and ended up getting killed and came back. And a lot of his friends did his burials for him. And were involved in that. One of the guys was a Medal of Honor recipient. And, yeah, I mean, it's a very, very humbling movie to watch. Like when you go back and you look at it. So if you haven't seen it, I suggest you watch it.
No, I'm definitely going to watch it now that you mentioned that. So so some of the stuff that you guys end up doing, I'm assuming has been passed on for multiple generations of individuals who've done this before you. You know?
It's actually funny you say that. Yeah. So once a year they have like an alumni where you'll get like old timers that'll come back and we'll have them stand in on the firing parties and like they still got it, man. They still got it.
That's actually really, really cool.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
I think you're 100% right, like both of you. I mean, what an important job.
Yeah, very important.
Yeah.
Like it's, I got to be a part of a firing party. I talked about it yesterday on the ball Santiago. Was killed in Afghanistan, and I was on his firing party, and we were just Ranger snipers. That's what he wanted. He wanted us to do it. So I'm sorry, Ranger buddy, we weren't as crisp as you guys were, but it was fucking cool.
Yeah,
and it was
different.
It's weird because, and I've talked to some of my buddies that were there about it. Like it was the worst thing I've ever had to do, and I only had to do it once. But being able to make sure he was put to rest the right way, and in the fashion that he chose, and to to do that it's the greatest honor I've ever had.
And I couldn't even imagine like the emotional struggle going through doing that either. I've never done one for my own friends. I've never done one for my own buddies. I can imagine the emotional struggle going into that. It took me a long time one of my friends that got killed, just to call and talk to his wife.
Yeah.
Just to call and talk to his wife. Like it took me a while just to do that.
Did you recognize sometimes, when individuals had served, let's say, even in World War II, and that, it's the last greatest generation, and we're just about, all of them have just about died at this point. I mean, we've only got a limited number of individuals that really served during that period of time. And, I can only imagine even being in that type of situation and seeing those people who served their country now being laid to rest so many years later in this cemetery, and you being a part of that time. I didn't
even think of that.
Yeah, and in Vietnam, so it wasn't just the soldiers of the day, because you're recognizing and saluting and honoring those who had passed.
World War II, Korea, Vietnam. Yeah,
I mean. Did you take that in at that moment, or was that something maybe much later?
No, I did, for whatever reason, I think youth, as a kid, you really don't care. And let's face it, 18 years old, you're kind of a kid, and you really, I'm more worried about going out drinking and chasing tail.
Yeah.
Is this your first enlistment? So you didn't re-enlist there? Or?
No.
Okay. Well,
why not?
Well, I re-enlisted to get out of there.
Okay, so that's what I was going with, because I didn't know if you went in a 3, a 4, what you did.
I went in as an E1. I took nothing.
No, I mean a 3-year enlistment or.
I don't remember.
Yeah. But you, of
course I don't know.
That's awesome, man.
But you re-enlisted, and what did you request? Duty location is your primary, request as far as re-enlistment?
So when I sat down with the re-enlistment guy, I looked at what unit was kind of in the next to the chute to rotate out. To go over to Iraq. So I re-enlisted for the 3rd Infantry Division, and so I just went straight there.
Okay.
And then I was gone like 6 months after I showed up, probably.
Nice.
Yeah, it took off. So, I sat down and he was like, "Oh, there's this, like they put out the rotation schedule and stuff at the time. They'd kind of ironed a lot of that crap out." And, so I went to the 3rd ID.
Down in Fort Stewart,
Georgia. Good to be back.
Well, there used to be, I guess there's not any longer, but there used to be an element of that. There was a detached element that was at Fort Benning all the time. Initially, it was the 197th Infantry Brigade. It became part of 3rd ID when 3rd ID, 24th became 3rd. And then 3rd ID they just had a detached
we had a whole brigade over there.
Yeah, brigade, yeah.
Yeah, we had a whole brigade at Fort Benning.
Yeah, when you say detachment, I don't think people realize like I was as big as a Ranger battalion. I mean, they were bigger.
Well, they were bigger because they were brigade. But
there were a ton of them.
Huh?
There were a ton of them.
Yeah, no, and
it was nice when they were out of town. You could actually like get into the bar.
You could. It was true. It was so true because I was there when they were 197th, and then when we became part of 3rd ID and the whole thing, they were there, and it was just so odd that they were a detached brigade that was sitting there, and they almost felt like they weren't part of it.
No,
because they were so detached.
Yeah.
You know, because you're on a TRADOC installation,
right?
You're the only force comm unit. You got a special ops unit sitting over here too, but for the most part, it's just you're the largest entity outside the TRADOC organization.
Yeah,
yeah.
And I remember a lot of those guys it just felt odd to them. You know, they felt a little off, and
they seemed a little off.
But so you spent how many years at 3rd ID then?
3.
Okay.
3, 4.
Was it this time frame? I don't know. Did you end up going to Ranger School during this time frame?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
how'd you get that school?
So I went I got back from Iraq and then tried out and went to a sniper section.
And did you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I didn't know that's something. Did you guys talk about
No, we didn't talk about any of this. No, you told me specifically last night at supper. You were like, no, don't talk about work.
So we got sniper bros here.
Yeah.
All right.
You were like, no, don't talk about work. That's what tomorrow's for.
That's right. I
remember this conversation probably about the time I shook your hand. That definitely happened. But so, yeah, I did that. And then when I went to BNOC or ALC? BNOC ALC?
It was probably ALC at that time.
Yeah, ALC? Yeah, whatever. The E6 course. Yeah. So when I went to the E6 course, when I went to the E6 course, they were like, hey, if you guys want to go to Ranger School, you can go. And I had been trying to go to Ranger School for a really long time, but I kept getting, because I was enlisted, I'm pretty sure I just kept getting overlooked by the different lieutenants that had failed 3 different times. And of course, you guys send the lieutenants because you want regardless of how many times they've been peered out. So, when I went as a BNOC, they were. Am I lying? Tell me if I'm lying, man. Yeah,
man, I don't even. I'm not a huge fan of lieutenants in general. So
yeah, so when I was at BNOC, they were like, if you guys want to go to Ranger School, you can go. I was like, really? They're like, yeah, just go take the RPFT, and if you pass, you're good to hook. Yeah. So I went over, I crushed the RPFT, and got my spot at Ranger School.
Which is not a hard test, by the way. People are intimidated by it. Yeah. It's not hard. You just do what you normally do and then 3 more miles.
You guys didn't have like a pre-ranger or anything then?
I did. That was one of the stipulations, supposed we had to go through the National Guard pre-ranger.
Oh, the one at Warrior Training Center at Fort Benning.
That's a tough course.
That one actually sucks.
So let me tell you.
I did not know that.
That is, so they have the highest rated graduation rate of any program pre-ranger. As a matter of fact, I've heard rumor that they may, start getting a lot more pre-ranger students because of that success rate.
It is that pre-ranger course is tough.
A lot of people don't even know that exists on Benning. I was taken there. I did something there on a personal level. I was invited there. I know some people, and they told me where it was. They're like, hey, you just head out, to, Ranger School and everything. Go down that path, and you're gonna, turn on this. And so I'm driving out there, and I'm like, this was all woods. I mean, this is like, when I was here, there was nothing out there, and I pull in, and I go, holy crap, because you go down like this drive, and there's this fenced-in area. You don't really see anything, maybe a couple of buildings, rooftops or whatever. Yeah. And you go in, and when you come in, you realize there's this whole world back there that you can't see from the main road. And they own a lot of land. I think they just acquired a lot more.
I'd believe it.
That they can do more maneuvers and stuff back there and do a lot more stuff. But, I mean, you've got, like, the largest rappel tower, I think, that's in all the Army that's there. I heard this.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, the story I believe goes that there was a sergeant major that was, I think, 173rd at that time frame. May have had the highest tower or something of that nature, and he came from there. And when he came to the Warrior Training Center and they had to build one, he's like, "We're going to build it like 1 foot taller or 2 foot taller."
Of course he did. Why wouldn't he do that?
So,
Yeah.
right. So said,
You know what an engineering nightmare that probably was too.
oh yeah, yeah. So they got this, and they got the C-130 sitting right behind it, and nice little bleachers and everything, and these barracks, and they do they also do master gunner training there for M1s and armor and such,
Sure.
and I mean it's really massive. And again, when there was pre-ranger students that were walking through when I was there, and that's when I was told, oh, this is like the premier place you want to go to. And they send National Guardsmen, for anybody who's listening. They send a lot of the National Guard infantry units are sending privates to basic training at Fort Benning. They go through the OSIT, they go to airborne school, they go to pre-ranger, they go to ranger school, and they come back to the unit as a private tabbed.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Crazy.
That's awesome.
It is awesome.
We had when I went through the National Guard pre-ranger course, there was, I think, 10 out of 12 guys from an ODA from 7th Group that were in there, and only 3 of them made it through. Now, when I talked to those dudes, they were like, "Yeah, man." I was like, "Why is your whole team here, basically? Like, what is your whole team doing down here?" And they were like, "Well, in order for us to get some better missions, we wanted to get like more qualifications under our belt so we can do more things." That's a very real thing in group. Like the better you guys look on paper and the better you guys perform, the better mission set you're going to get. You'll be able to fight for more things because you end up fighting for jobs in group. And I think it may have been something their team sergeant had put them up to, down there. So not a lot of them really had their head in the game, but only 3 guys had made it out of PRC, and then only 1 guy out of that team actually graduated. So
wow.
I mean, that's a tough course.
It is. Yeah. It's no joke.
Well, it's really cool that you went through it, because I had heard all of this stuff, seen the facility, got a chance to tour it and go through and such. But having now met somebody that actually went through it and saying the same thing, that's really neat.
You were Bravo 4 at this time? You'd already done U.S. Army Sniper School? Or you just OJT?
No, I had, OJT, bro.
Cool.
Yeah, knocked out OJT. And I was actually, and it pissed my unit off even more. And particularly my battalion sergeant major, it pissed him off really bad because I was actually set up for sniper school right after.
It's right around the corner there.
Right after. I was supposed to be going to that right afterwards. I was like, well, I can get a sniper spot any day of the week, but you guys keep blowing me off for Rangers course, so I'm going to Ranger school. Like, screw you guys.
It's better for promotion. And
too bad you could have done it like back to back, Cause
so we had a deployment coming up too. That was the other thing. So not only did I have ALC, I don't know, whatever the E6 course. Yeah. Not only did I have the E6 course and then pre-Ranger and then Ranger school, so I only had like 2 months off after I got back, and I still had to do pre-deployment training as well.
Yeah.
So in between those 2 deployments, I mean, I spent maybe like a month, 2 months at home max before I went back overseas.
So how many years were you at 3rd ID before you went to Ranger school then?
Maybe a year.
Wow, you had to really get up to speed and everything else, and then go off to
Well, I think it's just like anything else, like if you, as long as you study and you know your stuff and you're a good leader, like Ranger school, you'd really think that it's all about like knowing tactics and things like that. It's not. It's about how can you motivate people to get something done that nobody wants to move. How do you motivate them? Mm-hmm. And that's one of the biggest takeaways that you'll actually get from Ranger school, in my opinion, is how to be a people person and be able to get things done.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
So, wait, you talked very highly of Warrior Training Center and the pre-Ranger course and everything, but how much do you think that it actually prepared you for graduating? I mean, it was a tough course to get you to. Did you think that it really set you up for that success?
I think it does a really good job of weeding out people that just probably shouldn't be there in the first place, physically and mentally. Because there is a huge mental aspect to Ranger school as well. Huge. I mean, like we were talking last night, you recycled mountains. Dude, if I would have recycled mountains, I recycled Darby. And that wasn't that bad. If I would have recycled mountains, I would have cried.
Yeah.
I would have gone straight to the 82nd if I recycled Darby. I hated Darby. I just said in my mind that it's so remedial in Darby, and it needs to be.
Yeah.
But, coming from 375, I'm like, I do this every day. Like, I cannot listen to these people.
Oh, yeah.
And some of the stuff, I didn't have the best cadre in every instance when I was out there, so I had a negative experience. And I'm like, this is, And Derby phase is a weeding out phase
It is, yeah.
as well. Because there's guys that they've never been in that kind of suck. They're not that dedicated, especially, I think, from Ranger battalions, because you have to go or they're going to kick you out. So it's sort of like, well, that's like their Hail Mary before they end up making 82nd selection, as I like to call it. And, and so you're with those shitheads too that haven't weeded themselves out. And so I was like, I'm not doing Derby again. There's no way. I recycled mountains, and I'm like, okay, we were coming up on a cycle break. I could eat blueberry pancakes for 10 days.
Yeah.
I love being in the mountains. I'm from Colorado. I was like, this is awesome. This is great.
Really? God.
Oh,
I
loved it.
Mountains ate my soul.
Really?
Yeah. Like a little part of me is still out there. Like I hate it. Like I pissed myself. I remember I was.
You can go visit. It's not that far from here.
I don't want to. I remember like one of our first movements that we did up there. Like we spent all day walking up this hill in Dahlonega. And when I say hill, it's a damn mountain.
It's a mountain.
And we had spent all day walking up this mountain. When we got to the top and cut ruck, I was just laying there in the prone, holding security, being a good little ranger, and just randomly pissed myself. And I was like, well, how did that? Just like,
wow,
what just happened there? Like that's how
amazing.
broke off I was on that movement. I don't know what weight I was carrying. I don't remember any of that, but yeah.
Too much.
One of two times in my career I've actually like randomly wet my pants.
You don't want to get that looked at.
No, man. Right. I mean, it's just like, that physical exertion level that you like bring yourself to, but
yeah, that's crazy, man. The mountains was fun. I shouldn't say it was fun. It was awful. It rained on us every day, and it was cold, and I mean, it was super shitty, but it wasn't.
What month did you go through mountains?
It was October. Yeah,
that sucks.
It gets pretty damn cold. The people don't realize how cold Georgia can get because it's kind of a wet cold, nasty cold too. But we're above the bottom of the freeze line, so it still can get really nasty here.
I went through in July. I remember I went through mountains in July, and I remember
hot
freezing.
As hell too.
It was hot as hell during the day, and I froze my balls off at the night.
Yeah, because you're at altitude, enough altitude that it matters.
You're at enough altitude that it matters, and that sweat that's just built up on you all day long, just so cold and so crappy.
And you're living on 1,000 calories a day, and you're burning through that by noon. That's unpleasant. I was lucky. And I mean that sarcastically. I did regimental pre-ranger in August, I believe. And it must have been August. And then I got a staph infection from my ruck because I was a dirty ranger. So I had to take 30 days off. So I got to do pre-ranger in the hottest part of August. I mean, we did a range a week before I went to pre-ranger, and the heat index was 130 fucking degrees.
Yes.
And I'm like, this is America. It's not supposed. I'm not in Death Valley. I'm in Georgia.
With 100% humidity.
Oh, easily. I mean, there were.
But the military, man, it just figures out the best places to make your life suck.
It does. Yeah. If you look at a heat map of Fort Benning, Georgia, in the summertime, there's just a red ball. It
hovers around.
Yeah, it's like Benning. The Eye of Sauron's fucking hateful. It's a hateful place.
I do like when I flew into the airport yesterday, I was like, man, this is the first time I've actually been to Georgia as a civilian since the day I joined the military, and I have absolutely no desire to go visit any of those places that I've been in the military. Like none.
Oh man, that's funny.
Wait, you flew into Columbus?
No, I flew into Atlanta.
Oh, okay, to Atlanta.
When I joined the Army, they flew us into Atlanta.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're right here. I mean, Fort Benning, an hour south of here. Dahlonega is about an hour and a half north of here. You can go and visit both while you're here and reminisce about those days of glory.
Yeah, no. No, I'd rather go down the street to the diner and stick a fork in my eye and see how fast I can spin it around before my eyeball pops out before I go back to Benning or Dahlonega.
You were talking last night. I did hear you guys talking about, was it Derby face that you started hallucinating?
Yes. Yeah, no, I had a massive hallucination in Derby, and like I had I'm laughing in my head because I can see it. Yeah, there was out in the middle of the woods.
Leprechaun, right?
Well, the leprechaun came second. The leprechaun was like okay, now I know I'm hallucinating. Like I know leprechauns don't exist, and they definitely shouldn't be laying next to me waving. Like that was the okay, Matt, you're hallucinating part. But I felt wide awake because the sun was up. Rangers are solar powered. You know, so. But yeah, no, we were out walking on patrol going up to do a leader's recon, and I was just walking on the flank, and I just saw this beautiful marble building, like on the other side of the trees, and I had stopped and I had like grabbed the squad leader. I was like, bro, come here. We're too close to the objective. Look, it's right over there. You know? And I'm like whispering to this guy and I'm pointing. I'm like, no, how do you not see this thing, man? Like there's a huge freaking house. Like we're either off track or like we are too close to OBJ. And he's like, no, man, I don't see it. And I was just pointing, and I was like, this look of concern was apparently so grotesque on my face that the RI came over. And I remember him looking at me like I was half retarded because, you know, I was like, no, dude, this building is like right there.
You're just pointing at a tree.
And I'm pointing at a tree probably off in the distance. But yeah, no, it was real. It was there, you know, in my mind. And then when we had set up on the ambush line, I could see the building. Like, I was like, oh, shit, there it is again. It's right there. Like, I told you guys, that building's right there. And my buddy's like, whatever, bro, I'm going to sleep. You know? And then when my buddy went to sleep, that's when that bush turned into a leprechaun. And the little guy, he's propped up on his head with his arm, you know, just laying there staring at me, waving like, hey, Matt. It's like, hi, leprechaun. You know, it's just weird.
Yeah.
It's weird even now, man. I got to tell you, that's crazy.
Yeah, never saw anybody doing like the dollar bill into the tree. You know, I think it was a Coke machine thing, but
I definitely saw people like wander into the woods. I wandered into the woods. Like, it's good. I think that they train you to that point, to that level of fatigue, because weird shit happens in combat, and you never know. You would never assume like, hey, this guy is a stud. Maybe he's a West Pointer, or he was an athlete in college, or he's, you know, a superstar NCO, and he's just gonna wander into the woods and start eating mushrooms because they look like Nilla wafers, or he's gonna go and, you know, do something weird.
Yep.
You know, bury his rifle, or I don't know. I thought we were walking out of Florida, and I thought the CO had set up a tiki bar in the road. And he's like, you did it, boys. You graduated. Grab a drink. You got another, you know, half a click, and then you're going to drop your kit, and you're going to be Ranger School graduates in the morning or whatever we're going to do. And I'm like, fuck yeah, this guy's cool. And I'm walking up. I'm like, I'm going to get a daiquiri. He's got little umbrellas. And I'm about to grab my drink from the CO. I'd seen him once when I processed or something. And somebody grabbed me, and I was walking beeline into the woods, just pitch black, middle of the night. I'm just
thank God for Ranger buddies.
So my buddy's like, "This way, dude. Where the fuck are you going?" I'm like, "The bar. The bar." There's no bar.
Dude, I love that you have the story, because when I was going through the Desert Survival course by the French Foreign Legion, we were doing these night movements, and we were limited. We were limited to like the amount of water and the amount of food and all the same thing. You know what I mean? And we were out doing this long ass night trek, and I remember walking down the road and just dehydrated and tired. Same feeling. You know, it's just like a mini one, because it was only like 14 days or something. But I remember I'm like out walking in the middle of the night, and I saw like a little table set up in my mind. Like, I saw a table set up with drinks, and there was a guy standing there like waving us over, like, come on, bro, come get you some. Yeah. You know, and I remember seeing it in the distance, and as I got closer, I was like, oh, I'm going to get a drink. And then when I got there, it just disappeared. You want to talk about a heartache, bro?
God.
Oh, my God. Sad. Oh, dude. Yeah, it's so sad. It's so sad when you find out that stuff just isn't there.
No.
Yeah.
That's funny that you had like almost the same hallucination.
Very, very close. Yeah, and I
bet we're not the only ones either.
And it's weird, because I told you that was the first time I had hallucinated. No, that was the first time I had hallucinated, and I didn't even remember it until you told me that.
That's funny.
Yeah,
that's really funny.
French Foreign Legion. Were you just training side by side?
Yeah, I got the opportunity to go train with them. Like, it was just
When? How?
East Africa.
Oh,
so they run the course out from over there, and they had offered us some spots, so I took one of the spots. And then the best part was afterwards, I got to go over to their camp and like go drink beer and hang out with them.
Cool.
So this before or after Ranger School then?
Before.
No, this is when he was with Honor Guard.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Running around with a musket in East Africa.
Another conversation I didn't know it was possible for me to have.
I know, right?
So I was in the Honor Guard, and I trained with the French Foreign Legion. That's the weird thing about the military, is that the stuff that happens. Like,
right.
And I think it's so funny when you get the keyboard warriors and they're like, SF does this, and Rangers do that, and conventional does that. I'm like, yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got a guy who's conventional, and he's been to every school under the sun, and he's been on these cool missions that you'd never expect him to be on. And sometimes you get a soft guy that's never done anything.
Right.
You know?
They exist.
The TTPs that your uncle told you about, those don't exist anymore.
No.
And that might have been just for his team.
Dude, and even the stuff I was doing in group like 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
A lot of it's probably phased out.
Oh yeah. That's the other thing about the soft. You know, like if you're not if you're not staying plugged in, you're obsolete in 6 months.
Oh, yeah.
Operationally speaking, you can be obsolete in the snap of a finger.
Yeah.
Because it's cutting edge. You know, you can't stay on the cutting edge when you're out here in the
when you're not doing, when you're drinking coffee and sitting at podcasts.
When you're just being a regular jerk off like me.
Well, I mean, here you had a guy from a unit that dressed up in 1700 uniforms that's going over to East Africa, training with the French Foreign Legion and getting a desert survival course opportunity.
Right.
What was that?
I mean, it's exactly what it sounds like. They just beat the living. It sucks. Like you basically just lay in the sun and starve. You know, like you learn how to take care of yourself in a desert. So like at one point we had taken a camel and learned like how to actually get water from a camel.
Wow.
And it's actually really interesting. What you do is you, like, if you've ever gutted an animal before, most people slit it like right up the middle.
Yeah.
But as you're doing that, instead of going right up the middle, go a little bit higher and kind of make it out, and then you push the guts back in and you pull the stomach lining out, and all the water starts to gather right there, the drinkable water, and you just end up like cupping it up out of the gut.
Yeah, some camel soup. Yeah,
and it tastes like shit.
Really?
Yeah.
I was thinking you were going to say, "Oh my God, it was heavenly at that moment."
No, did that course help you out at all in your career? Did you get to third ID and people were like impressed? Or?
You know what I learned going through that course is that if you're in the desert, you're probably going to die. That is what I took out of it.
Yeah.
And no, nobody gave two shits.
So there wasn't a whole lot of.
And I don't even think it came up in conversation until somebody saw me in my class A's and they're like, "Bro, what's that?"
Oh, you get.
I was going to say, you
get a
get
badge
something
for it. Yeah.
No, get out.
Yeah, I'll pull up a picture later, like after we're done, and I'll show you the badge.
Is it like a French Foreign Legion kind of thing?
It's weird. Yeah, it's a cool little pin. I'll show you.
Is it a camel? What's on it?
Camel.
It's like a knife and a scorpion and some other. Yeah,
sweet.
they're all
scorpions.
Like,
you
gotta have
than a camel. Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. If it looked like the Camel cigarettes camel, that would have probably not done it.
I think that's kind of what I was thinking. I mean, it's French. You know, you get a camel and a cigarette.
What's funny is like some of the outfits some of these guys wore afterwards.
Yeah.
Like I don't really remember them, but they were like traditional. Like
I've seen the French Foreign Legion
white
uniform.
they wore some weird stuff.
That hat.
They wore some weird stuff. And what's funny is like talking to some of those guys. Like when I was over on the camp drinking that one night, they had let prostitutes from like Djibouti. They had let prostitutes over onto the camp. Like to come on. And so like even if you don't want them there and you can tell them to go away, but they won't leave you alone. Like they'll just hang off your arm and they'll just stand there with you.
Wow.
And you can be like, "Girl, get away." Like I can feel the AIDS like on you. Like get off of me, you know? And no, I was sitting there smoking a cigarette because I used to smoke back then. I was sitting there smoking a cigarette and this Legionnaire comes up to me and in perfect English, he's like, Bro, are those camels? I was like, yeah. He's like, "Where did you get camels from?" Because I used to smoke Camel filters. Yeah. He's like, "Where'd you get those from?" I was like, "The American base." I was like, "Bro, are you American?" He's like, "Well, kinda." He's like, "What do you mean, kinda? Are you in the Legion?" He's like, "Yeah, bro." I was like, "Why are you in the Foreign Legion, dude? Like, what are you thinking?"
I was just gonna say that.
And I was like, "What are you thinking? What'd you do?" He's like, "Oh, I got in trouble." I was like, "What'd you kill somebody or something?" He's like, "Yeah, something like that." And I was like, "Well, now it makes sense." Like, yeah, dude from like LA or something that had just rolled out, and that was his option. That's what he did.
Damn, that's crazy.
And so I actually got to talk to him, and it's funny because I had one of the guys that follows me on Instagram hit me up. He's like, "Yeah, I was thinking about joining the Legion." I was like, "Do you speak French?" And he goes, "No." I was like, "Don't do it." he's like, "Why?" I didn't know this until I had like this drinking beer, because then I like gave him a pack of cigarettes, and I was like, "Now I want to hear your tales, bro. Like, you tell me your tales, you know." And when he had got there, he said they just beat the living hell out of him because he couldn't speak French.
Wow.
And so until he could understand what they were saying, they would just beat him and PT him until he could understand what was being taught. And so that's how he got taught French. And he said that he's like, "Dude, we get the shittiest weapons, we get the shittiest equipment. Our parachutes, I swear to God, have holes in them." He's like, "It just sucks."
Totally different than what you would, I guess.
And they get, well, none of them are truly French citizens until they get done doing their time. That's like part of the deal. And I had talked to one old timer that had been in the Legion for like ever, and he said that he had jumped into Rwanda.
What the fuck?
Yeah. And that was their mission, was just to fight their way out of Rwanda. Like they had given them a rally point.
No way.
Yes. They had jumped into Rwanda and they had just fought their way out, and they just had to make it to their rally point. That was their job. Like, we're going to drop you here and just make your way over to here. And whatever you encounter in between, just kill it and hopefully you come out alive.
Survival games, like in the real.
Yeah.
I mean,
those dudes are hardcore. Yeah. And with shit weapons and shit equipment, and like, nobody cares about you because you're not. They don't care.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome.
Like I know military wise, like we always give the French a bunch of shit. Yeah. But I'm telling you right now, those dudes, they're tough. Like those guys are tough.
Yeah.
Well, I
have to be.
I had already, like, long time ago, had, studied up or read some stuff about them, but I didn't know enough about how you got into it and all of that. But I thought that we, in the military, at that time period when I had looked at it, I was really young, but it was more of like, what was the training that we adapted from them, that we were probably using or may have been using or something of that nature. But I was really fascinated by the type of training they did. I mean, like, it seemed like the whole purpose was to abuse their body and put them in very difficult situations, either by body or mind, as much as they could. And that just seemed like that's all they did. That was the one takeaway that I looked at, was like, holy cow, man, this is like, a life, 3 years, 4 years of just constantly being in a ranger school or being, in a selection or something of that nature. Crazy.
Yeah.
But there's people that do it for like a career, like 20 years.
Yeah, bro. Yeah, this guy, he was like an old timer, and he wasn't even, he was like from South America.
Really?
Yeah.
That's what's so odd, is that a majority of them, well, I wouldn't say the majority, but there's a good bit of them that come from all over the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of Spanish speakers. Like, I ran into, maybe it was just like that unit in particular, but there's a lot of Spanish speakers in that unit.
That is
a lot of them.
Weird.
Yeah.
We need to do a podcast.
Go to Rwanda.
Legion, man. I don't know.
Jump into Rwanda and see if we can get our way out.
If you're in the Foreign Legion and you're listening to this, we want to talk to you.
Yeah, right.
Because
those guys are
I
cool.
have questions.
Yeah, I have so many too. Yeah.
That's
those guys are cool.
awesome. You got to meet those guys.
So the only time frame that you really got a chance to talk to this guy was during the smoke break.
Yeah, smoke break with a Djiboutian prostitute hanging off my arm. So I wanted to get rid of.
I thought you were going to say you were smoking Camel non-filters.
Oh no, that's too hardcore. I'm not, I never had a leather jacket. I can't do that.
There were years ago I smoked as well, and somebody, it was basic training actually, and somebody gave me one of those things, and because I was just hardcore for a cigarette. It was like, oh my god, man, we need one. We're getting a break. And this guy was like, here, have one. I'm like, shit, is that a non-filter Camel? And he was like, yeah. I must have been high for like the next 5 hours. You know what I mean?
That's funny.
That thing, it was like, dang, man, that thing has a lot of nicotine, that you're putting in it.
That's a serious cigarette.
It really is.
That's what I used to smoke. Yeah.
Was it really?
Long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess if you smoked them a lot, I mean, that I remember my uncle smoked like Pall Malls or whatever, and they're like this non-filters. They were like the same.
Those are rough. That's what I used to. I used to steal those. Yeah.
Did you really? So was it around this time frame that you ended up going back to Third ID and then maybe going into Special Forces, or what was it that caused you to do that? You obviously met guys from group and stuff that were there at Washington attending their buddy's funeral, and maybe at that time frame that was your first exposure, to Special Forces. But what was it that while you were at Third ID that said, hey, listen, it's time for me to go and do something different?
Yeah, so that would be, I love referring to this mission because it just makes me laugh my ass off because of how retarded it is. But we did an operation in Iraq called Operation Mousetrap, where we had these snipers that were just taking dudes out in the unit left and right. And it basically halted the entire battalion. And they were like, all right, so the battalion came up with a plan to use my squad as sniper bait.
Sweet.
Right? Doesn't that sound like something you would like to do? And so I get off patrol, like I come back from patrol at night, my LT, the one that I was telling you about that I actually like, that I was playing the poop jokes with, he walks up to me and he's like, hey, Matt. I was like, what's up, sir? He's like, I got good news and I got bad news. I'm like, all right, tell me the good news. He's like, good news is we got tomorrow off. We don't have patrol. And I was like, well, that doesn't sound right at all. Why do we have tomorrow off? And he's like, well, it's not really going to be an off day. We've got an operation coming up the day after that. And so we've got to do rehearsals in the afternoon. We got to get things together. And I'm like, all right, well, explain to me what this operation is. And he's like, what we're going to do is we're going to drive through these bad neighborhoods in an attempt to draw these guys out. It's like, okay. And he's like, after we get done going through these bad neighborhoods, then we're going to go to this big open area where we had just gotten a tick like a couple of weeks before. He's like, we're going to go in this big open area behind that. We're going to circle the wagons. We're going to take the Humvees, circle the wagons. Gunners are going to drop in the turrets. I'm like, all right, I already don't like this. He's like, and then you're going to dismount. You're going to take your squad. You're going to dismount. And you're going to go set up a like Prick 17, something like that, and put up the long antenna. And you're just going to sit out there. And then when you get shot at, he's like, when you get shot at, then we're going to cordon off the area. You know, like we get another platoon that's going to be with the Iraqi ESU unit. They're going to cordon off the area, and then we're just going to do a systematic search and clear until we kill these snipers. I'm like, what if I get shot? Like you said, get shot at, but these guys haven't missed yet, really. I mean, like I don't like that idea at all. I was like, this has got to be a fucking joke. Like you are like, that can't be real. Like that sounds so idiotic to me. Like that's fucking stupid. Yeah. Like I am not doing that. And he's like, no, it's a real thing, man. And I was like, whose stupid ass idea was this? And he's like, oh, it's a CO. You're going to have to go talk to him. So I went up to the company CP and like just bust through the door, dude. It's like midnight, 1 o'clock. Yeah. And the first sergeant's still sitting in there. And he sees me storm in and go look like straight at the CO's desk. And he's not in there. And he's like, Sergeant Tardio, can I help you? I was like, yeah. The freaking commander, where is he? And he's like, hold up, Sergeant. I was like, no, this is bullshit. And I started going off with the first sergeant. He's like, dude, let's go outside and smoke. So I went outside and I was smoking a cigarette with him. And I was like, dude, here's my issue with you guys, right? Like, you're going to send me to do some idiotic BS. And the commander, to my knowledge, is going to be sitting in an up-armored Humvee while we're out there getting our asses shot off. He doesn't even have the balls to go out there and walk with us and do this retarded ass shit. And you want my guys to set up a long antenna, sit in an open field with a sniper that hasn't missed yet, and just take one for the team. And you want me to go explain that to my guys, and you want me to lead them into that. Like, how do I even look at them in the face and tell them that's what we're doing? Like, that's just so idiotic. It's not even funny. And the first sergeant just kind of paused, like took a puff of his cigarette, and he's like, yeah, I see the problem there. You know, he's like, and he's like, fuck it, dude, I'll go with you. He's like, I'm going to go with you guys, but we're definitely not sitting in the open. And I was like, it's funny how when you're on that side of it, all of a sudden we're not sitting in the open, right? And so he's like, we'll dive through the hollows and we'll just go back and we'll act like we're going out doing like I think it was called a sweat assessment at the time, like sewer, water, electricity, and transportation, so we're going to go do like a sweat assessment. That's what our front's going to be for this. And then if we get shot at back there, then we'll call him in. I was like, all right. So we stayed on our schedule, but as far as the patrol goes, like we went off on time, we went through everything, we had our hit times, everything was on point. But of course, the Iraqi army wasn't ready to go, and they were our main force for cordoning off the area. Yeah, what do you know? The Iraqis weren't ready to go on time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, ooh, what do you know? And
unprecedented.
So, long story short, we end up getting shot at, and this round just cranks off right past us when we're back in an alleyway.
That's fun.
We all get down and take a knee, and the first sergeant's like, hey, sir, we just got, we took a round. It came from over here. Go ahead, call in the cordon. And he's like, well, the cordon's not ready to go yet. And we're like, well, don't you think that would have been good information to pass off, And so the first sergeant's like, all right, well, then come over here, pick us up. Like, we're ready to go. I'm not going to sit here and try to duke it out with a sniper with an infantry squad. If you could just come pick us up, we can just pop smoke and get out of here. And he's like, no, you're staying out there till they're ready. And my first sergeant stopped and he kind of looked at me and he keys up the mic and he's like, all right, then we're going to pop smoke and we're going to come to, if you're not going to pick us up, we're going to pop smoke and we're going to come to you because this is freaking asinine. Yeah. And the commander's like, no, negative, you will stay out there and blah, 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 blah. And the first sergeant just lets go of the mic and he looks at me and he's just like, what the fuck? I was like, you see, now you understand like why I'm so pissed off. Like this is the constant crap that you deal with when you're in the infantry. And he's like, what do we do? And I was like, well, I got a place around the corner. Let's just go kick in the door and strong point it. Like he said, we got to stay out here, but he's not dictating how we stay out here. Let's go strong point this house. And so we strong point this house for probably about an hour and a half. And as we're sitting in there, I remember watching Iraqi units rolling into town that should have been there like 3 hours ago, setting up. And then they finally came out. But the messed up part that I absolutely hate and love about this entire story, the messed up part about this thing is when the cordon was actually set in place, one of the drivers was looking at the top 10 HVI list, and he looks down at the street. He's like, that dude looks familiar. And he's like, oh, shit, that's like number 2.
No shit.
Jumps out, takes the guy at like gunpoint. No so what goes up? What goes up in the AAR? Oh, it was a successful op, man. We cut the number 2 HVI by doing this. So how many more times do you think we did that mission, right?
Oh, my God.
And so that was one of those things that was like very eye-opening to me where, like you actually discover that you're kind of just a pawn. And so after that rotation, I got back, did Ranger School and everything. And then the next rotation overseas I did was to Afghanistan, and my sniper section did an uplift job for SEAL team and ODA guys. And didn't really care too much working with the squeals, but when I worked with the team guys, I was like, when I was working with the team guys, I was like, I like this, like I kind of like where their heads at, like where they're going. This is what I'm going to do. This is where I'm going to be at. And that was a really rough trip for us. And I actually wanted to get out afterwards. And I actually, at the tail end of that deployment, I haven't got into this part before. At the tail end of that deployment, I actually had a failed suicide attempt that nobody knew about. Nobody. I actually had a misfire.
No shit.
No shit. I was sitting in Bagram, like right across the street. They had a like transient area kind of set up across, and I don't think we can get into talking about any of that. But yeah, I was sitting in Bagram, and I was over by the airfield, and I was just like, I fucking like everything that had gone on. You know, I was just sitting out back one night, and I couldn't tell you what it was that got to me, man. But yeah, I had a misfire in the middle of the night. Sitting outside, I was sitting on a little T-wall staring at the airfield, and I was like, fuck this, dude, I gotta get out. I was like, this is not, I don't know what's going on, but it's not right. Like, I gotta get the fuck out. I can't do this anymore. I got back to the fob, like the main fob where my unit was at, and I got on the phone, and I called home to my wife at the time, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, I can't, I gotta get out. I was like, yeah, I don't think you understand where I'm at right now mentally. Like, my hair was falling, like, no shit. Like, I hadn't taken a shower in months. And I got back and I'd taken a shower, and every single time I'd go in and take a shower, like I was getting handfuls of hair. Like my hair was just falling out. Like I was so stressed out I couldn't sleep. I got back on the base, and then you know, I was one of the first people to pull out on that one. And then you know, one of my buddies got blown up, or two of my buddies got blown up on the like literally the day I got back to the base, and I'm just like, fuck, dude, I gotta get out. And she was like, well, you got to think about it. We got kids, we got family, we got bills to pay, we got this and that. I was like, you're not listening to me. I want to get the fuck out. Yeah. And she convinced me basically to stay in over that phone conversation. And I'm like in tears on the other side of the phone. She doesn't even know it. And I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it my way. I was like, I'm going to go to selection. So fuck you. I was like, you're either in or you're out. Pick one. Yeah. And she's like, all right, well, if you're going to stay in and that's what you want to do, do it. So I did it. So I got back. I spent like maybe 2 months training up. Like as soon as I hit stateside, I went into the SF recruiter office and I was like, "Here's my information. I want to go." He's like, "You want to train up?" And I was like, "No, just send me, dude. I've been in the infantry for like 8 years now. Just I'll ride this train, bro. Like send me." So I went, passed, and that's what I did.
That's fucking badass.
That's weird, right?
And did your mentality change? Did that feeling of like, you know, hopelessness or whatever that feeling is, where you're just done and you're powerless and you got to get the fuck out of there. Whatever means necessary.
So it's funny. Like you would think graduating from the Q course, right? Like you would think that would be like a really big accomplishment in somebody's life. But I remember even like the day I graduated from the Q, I was just like, I didn't give a shit. Yeah. You know, I was just like, man, that's whatever. Off to group.
But you thought that by going to SFAS and Q that you were going to, in joining group, you're going to break the cycle of what you're currently in, and you thought it might be better on the other side. Yeah. But you had just served with an ODA, so you knew what you were getting yourself back into.
Right.
But somehow you thought that was going to...
It's better than having somebody tell me to be sniper bait. You know, like at least when I was with the team, you know, we had set up and we were out in Paktika, and we had set up on like this tiny little patrol base, and both the roads were blown up on the way in, like completely blown out, and there was just IEDs everywhere. They had surface-to-air missiles, like Taliban had SAMs out there. Yep. Thank you, Hillary Clinton. And I don't mean that as a joke. Like that's actually documented. That's where those particular SAMs came from. Serial numbers tracked back. So thanks, Hillary. We really appreciate that. And we couldn't get resupplied by air. We couldn't drive out by ground. We were literally surrounded by Taliban, getting in ticks on a daily basis. And at least in that fight, we had a say. Like I could go to the team sergeant and be like, look, if we sit here and we continue to build base, we're going to get our asses handed to us and we're going to end up dying. I want to go out and I want to start setting up ambushes. I want to start doing recce patrols on these villages. I want to go out and start doing this shit. And we'd sit there and we'd discuss. It was me, the Bravo, and the team sergeant. We would discuss and argue about what we need to be doing. And I linked up with the Bravo and we became pretty good buddies. And he agreed with me, so we just beat up the team sergeant until he agreed to let us go out and whoop some ass. Yeah. And we'd do that, and we pushed him back, and we started pushing him back, and then they'd push back, we'd kill them off, and they'd get upset. And we actually had built like a camaraderie on how we were going to go about attacking this within itself, like to keep our head safe. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that to me was huge. That to me was very huge. Just that little bit of input was huge. Yeah. And they also stuck up. They'd done a good job, like sticking up for me. Like if I got my butt in hot water, they'd stick up for me. And I mean, I'd felt like pulled in, and I was like, this is the life that I want to live. I don't want to live this life where I've got to convince my first sergeant, you know, that
the CO's crazy.
The CO's lost his damn mind.
Maybe it's not the best idea to sit you out there in the open and just get shot at by snipers and see what happens.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
There's definitely a disconnect. I think sometimes you get leadership and they're sitting in an air conditioned room looking at an ISR screen, watching drone feed, and they're like, "Oh, we could do this. This is a good idea." And it's not really a we proposition. It's somebody else goes and puts their ass in the sling.
Right.
Did you still feel like, when you're on the teams, did you still feel like you were a pawn in the game, or did you feel like you'd leveled up in some ways, or you had more control? Or
yeah, you definitely feel like you level up. Like there's no lying there. Like you definitely feel like you level up. I went to briefing deputy ambassadors and talking to like 2-stars is like an E6, E7. And getting that say in the game and everything else. I was able to shape like I led major assaults against ISIS. Like I can say that. That's on like declassified documents, so I think I can at least say that. It's on some of the Word documents and stuff, right? Went out there and whipped the shit out of them, and definitely felt like I had a say in that game. But there's also that political aspect that comes into play, to where no matter how much input you have in it, you also have pushback from command saying, no, you're only going to get these assets. You might need all of this, or you might be requesting all this. We'll give you so much to an extent, but there's only so much that you can get to keep that low footprint. And so you still have your mission to do. Like they still tell you what you need to be doing to an extent, but your way that you attack it, the way that you go about solving that problem is really where you get that input and buy.
So when you went through, what group was it that did you ask for a particular group based on a language or something, or how did that end up going in your MOS? I'm curious about both.
Yeah, so MOS, they gave me my MOS that I requested, and then I actually wanted to go down to 7th group, and my buddy that I had served with in the Honor Guard had made his way over to SF prior to me, and he's like, dude, don't go to 7th. Just don't do it. He's like, those guys are a bunch of retards. Don't go to 7th. He's like, come to 10th. He's like, come to 10th. So my buddy went over and he pulled some strings and got me into 10th group.
Yeah. But that's who you, okay. Yeah. What was your MOS?
I was a Charlie.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said that when you came out the other side, you didn't really, you weren't able to acknowledge what you just accomplished, though.
No, because I was still torn inside. Like I truthfully, like I didn't really feel like that was something that I wanted to be doing. Like I was more or less done with it. I was happy because I was able to have like, how do I put that? So I had a guy that, one of the snipers in my section got tasked out to a different team, and he had actually lost his leg on a mission. And when I had gone to selection, and then I came back to the unit that I was in after selection, I was sitting down and one of my buddies came up and he's like, hey man, so-and-so was looking for you. I was like, shit, he's back. Like, yeah, man, he's out of the hospital. He's got his little tink leg now. Like, calling him tink. Like, it's great. Like he's back. And I was like, well, what did he want? And he and my buddy said that he actually wanted to say thank you. I was like, for what? I wasn't there. I didn't do anything for him. Well, I used to keep those snipers, like I used to keep those guys late and like just drill them and train them and drill them and train them and stuff like that. And he said that he didn't really understand why I would take him and drill him and train him all the time. And he's like, that he actually felt that a lot of the stuff that I taught him had kept him alive. Wow. And so going into group, I also had that same mind frame, because you don't have a lot of guys with, combat experience. Like at this point, like things are starting to slow down. And I felt like I had that buy-in as far as making sure we weren't out there doing dumb things. And I definitely had butted heads with command a couple times to make sure that we weren't doing things that were going to get guys killed, and that we weren't taking the typical approach that we did beforehand. The team that I had replaced in the ISIS fight, actually, I went out and did the leaders recon, or the, what do we call that? PDSS?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd gone out and did the PDSS and linked up with that team. And it took us days just to fly out there because of the amount of fire that these guys are under, and finally get out there. And it was really weird talking to one of the, I woke up in the morning, I brought my little constellation gifts. I've lived in the middle of nowhere before. I know how bad that life sucks. I know I want nicotine and coffee. Like those were the only two things I cared about. So what I bring? I bring nicotine and I bring coffee. And so, I roll over like in this Afghan house. I wake up in the morning, I roll over, and they had a little table that they had set up, and I'd set out the dip and coffee and shit on the table, and just sat there smoking some cigarettes until guys came over, and we sat there and started talking. And I was talking to, I don't even know if I want to say the guy's name. I was talking to one of the guys on the team, and he was like, hey man, he's like, Tardio, how do I know that name? Tardio, sounds familiar. And I was like, I don't know, bro. I don't know. Well, like another day goes by and he's like, dude, I I know where I know your name now. I was like, all right, well, tell me, because I don't think I've ever met you. And apparently he had heard tales about me when he was going through the Q course, because one of his instructors was like, yeah, there's this other dude, and he was talking about some of the stuff that we were doing in Paktika. And he's like, bro, you've lived like this before. I was like, yeah, life sucks like this. Like, don't get me wrong, dude. Like, this is not a good place to be, bro. And he's like, dude, y'all did some badass shit down there. He's like, I heard about this. And anyway, so they had done a big push about, I don't know, 2 days after we left ground to head back stateside. They had done a big push, and that guy that I was talking to actually got killed during that push, and most of the team had got wiped out.
Oh, man.
And so there was 2 guys left on the ground when I got back over there. And as a matter of fact, the first day we got on ground and we had pulled the team in, so I had flown out early after that to go and help start taking over the place, because they still had guys holding the area down, but there was no team guys left. And so I got out there ahead of time, and I actually figured out, I don't even really care about talking about this. I had actually figured out where they had got shot at from, and where the team had got wiped out from. And just out of sheer spite and anger, I dropped 400 or 500 pound bombs on that position and just fucking knocked it out. And a couple guys, after we had dropped the bombs on it, I was like, okay, 4's a bit excessive. Let's stop. Let's stop. But there was still part of the fighting position that was up. And so I had walked away, and I just did this from the camp that we were staying on. I had walked away, and one of the infantry guys on the perimeter was like, yo, Matt. He's like, there's still 2 guys alive over there. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? He's like, there's still 2 guys alive over there. And so I ran up and I got on the spotting scope, and I look over, and sure as shit, we had caught one of their caches on fire. When the bombs went off, a couple of their cache caught fire, and it was you could see shit popping off, and the guys are flustering to put it out. And I was like, fuck those dudes. So I ran over and I jumped on a 50 cal and just smoked them. It was on I was like, fuck those guys. And then everybody started lighting them up, and the whole place just fucking exploded. But I don't know. I guess the point of that is I at least felt like at that point in time, all my experience and stuff was able to actually really start coming into play to where I could be affecting things that would save lives down the road. We didn't, the way we attacked that fight wasn't, I don't want to get into tactics or anything like that, but the way that we went about pushing those guys back and actually killing them in droves was from going at it from an unconventional mindset, more or less. And my team didn't lose a single guy on that trip, and I'm very, very proud of that, having led some of those major operations. And so for me, that means more than being able to stand back and say we killed X amount of people on this trip. No, we didn't lose a guy. That's actually what really counts. I'm very proud of that. The other team that was out there with us, I lost a good friend on that trip, who's an absolute fucking hero. Dude's an absolute stud. And I went through selection with that guy, and he was just a man among men, bro. I can't make this guy up. He had hitchhiked his way out of Soviet Russia, to get to the States. In wintertime, had hitchhiked his way out in Soviet Russia. In selection, this guy, and he had already had 2 Purple Hearts before this, right? And he had hitchhiked his way out. So at the time I'd met him, going through selection, he'd already had 2 Purple Hearts. This guy was just a fucking stud. And I liked him because him and I were, we were always finishing close, PT event wise and stuff like that. But on the trek at the end of selection, I'm thinking I'm doing okay. I'm broke, I'm hurt, I injured my back very bad. I had a compression fracture in my spine. And I'm out there doing the trek, just sucking ass. I'm like, whatever, man, it's the last event. I'm probably in 10th or 12th place, just kind of rolling along with my boy. And out of nowhere, I see this dude just running back towards us. I was like, what the fuck? Who is this stud? Because I'm still going one direction. He's already coming back. And he goes running past by me. And I was like, bro, how far up? He's like, it's only 2 or 3 more miles down the road, bro. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I was like, you're 4 to 6 miles ahead of me? How did you do that, man? And all he screams at me, is I want a fucking cigarette. And he just keeps running. And I'm like, this guy's a fucking stud.
Yeah.
He's an absolute stud. And so I get back, and he's standing, I finish, and I'm broke off. I am fucking broke. I finish and like I grab my ruck and I limp my way back over there, and this dude's standing next to this like fire pit that he had just decided to light. Like lit the fire pit, and he's smoking cigarettes. And I'm like, bro, where did you get? Because you're not allowed to have nicotine there. You know what I mean? And I'm like, where did you get smokes from? And he's like, well, one of the cadre members, he said if I finished first, he would buy me a pack of cigarettes. I was like, you're shitting me. I was like, let me get one of those, bro. I was like, I want one. But he was an absolute stud. And then when I got to language, my teacher was actually sick for like a week. And because he was like a fluent Russian speaker, he actually came in and taught my class.
Oh, wow.
And so cool. Like I had like one of my boys like actually like teaching and stuff. And he was just, dude was just an absolute stud. But he had got killed on an ambush. They were out. I'm not going to get into it. But yeah, he had got killed on an ambush, and he took out the people that had done it before he lost his life, and saved undoubtedly a lot of people. Just absolute fucking stud, man.
When did you get out to 10th Group?
2015.
That time frame, Mike was the CSM.
Oh yeah,
fairly certain. Mike Pritz, ring a bell? Sergeant Major Pritz. Yeah. He's actually a host of the podcast.
Is he really?
Yeah. Yeah. And he's still out in Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
And he actually is a Tillman scholar and went on to teach history and is a coach at the football team out there, one of the high schools. And for freshmen, I think is what he's the head coach of the freshman team. Yeah. So occasionally he's still able to come on, but most of the time he's, drawing up plays, going through some kind of training with them, all that kind of stuff. But Joey Ivanov,
don't know that one.
Okay. Eric Martin,
that sounds familiar.
Okay. Eric used to be a host on the podcast.
Okay.
I'll probably edit some of this out, but but at any rate, it's one of these things. I know it's group is big, but I would have thought that you would have known Mike, Mike Pritz or Major Pitts.
Yeah.
CSM.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny how like a small world it is. Like it's a big world, like group's huge. Mm-hmm. But then like, I don't know, like me, like I stayed on my team and like the teams I worked with. And other than that, I didn't venture outside because I didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
You show up and you go in your team room and everybody's like, hey, this guy, like he's in group. I was like, no, man, I don't fucking know that dude.
Yeah.
Like I pay attention to my team and what's going on and what's relevant. And if it's not that, if I'm not networking with you, like I don't know you because I don't care.
Yeah. We did a episode yesterday with Luke, and he's from 7th. And he was talking about the one place that he would like to go. He's right now on DS duty down at Fort Benning, is 10th Group.
Yeah.
And because, it's a hell of a lot more fun in the snow and the whole bit. Yeah. So how was that for you? I mean, you were almost kind of getting back into, a new nature there of being out in the Pacific Northwest, being with snow and the whole bit. Was it like being right back at home in a sense there in Colorado?
I absolutely love Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah. I absolutely love Colorado.
Yeah.
Love Colorado. It is the best, like Fort Carson is the best kept secret in all of the Army.
Really?
Yeah. I'm thoroughly convinced.
Yeah.
Thoroughly convinced. Been up and down the East Coast, all over.
Yeah.
Down Texas. Texas sucks. Don't ever sign up for Texas, like anywhere in Texas. Don't go to any of those bases in Texas. But like Colorado, Carson is a gem. It really is a gem.
Why do you say that?
Because of the location. Okay. Like after there's a military town around it, just like any other base, but it's very small. And then the Springs is huge.
Yeah.
And there's plenty to do in the Springs. Like you can't go to a bar without running into a Joe down in the Springs. But like once you get outside of Colorado Springs and you start, you can go in the mountains, you can go hiking, you can go up to Pikes Peak, you can go, just off 11 Mile State Park. There's just tons of crap out there, man. Just tons. And even if you don't want to do that, you want to get away, then you can go up like the Longs Peak area. You can go, dude, there's just so much to do out there.
There's a ton to do out there.
So much to do.
Like, if you're bored in Colorado,
you're lazy.
Just head west.
Yeah.
Up in the mountains. Do something.
Yeah.
Did you end up getting like Halo School or anything while you were there? Or?
No, they started that after I had gone through, where they did like mandatory Halo. So yeah, they'd started that after I had gone through.
And how long did you end up staying with 10th?
4 years.
Okay. Did you go to another group after that, or is that when you popped out? Okay.
Yeah, that's when I was out.
Yeah. So how many years total did you end up spending?
16.
Okay.
You're so close. Why'd you end up not going all the way to 20? What happened?
I med boarded my way out. So when I took a lot of blasts last trip. I had taken a lot of blasts to the dome, and I ignored one of them. I had one that hit me like very, very hard to the point where I was like puking on the objective.
Oh,
and
geez.
we had one of our blocking positions that was in contact, and we knew they had mortar systems in place. They had started firing the mortar systems, and I had an objective that I needed to finish. And had I stopped and been like, hey, I just got fucked up, like, you know, and we were pushing commandos at that point, and we were so thin, pushed out to where I'm by myself pushing these commandos when I got hit, and I just kind of shook it off and kept going, you know, and it didn't set in like right away, which was the weird part on this one. It hadn't set in right away. There was a underground fighting position that the enemy had dug out that was this big L shape that had gone over, and I had called for one of my buddies to bring up. I had ran out of explosives, and I had called one of my buddies to bring my speedball up so I could keep bipping stuff, you know. And I had taken off my kit to go like tunnel crawling, and when I had got down and got in this place, it was actually like where I was like, oh fuck, I'm puking. Like, this is bad. Like, this is really bad. I had rigged that one and blew it, and then went to another one and rigged that, and dude, that was just a fucking fight. You know what I mean? And I had got back, and that blocking position was in contact, and I was like, I am in a bad way right now. Like, I am in a very bad fucking way. And, you know, you could hear those guys talking on the radio. I got my commander barking in my fucking ear to get the assault element off the objective. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I got it. Like, I'm fucking busy. You know, like, please leave me alone. Like, I'm handling this as quick as fucking possible. Like, leave me the fuck alone, please, sir.
Yeah.
You know, and pulled time fuse on the last one. And I waited for it to go off because I wanted to make sure we dropped this thing so that they couldn't use it anymore. And ended up walking probably about 1.5 miles back to camp, like, longest trek of my life. Like, honestly, I got back and just collapsed and went down. Yeah. And I had slept it off all day. And next thing I remember was, like, my Delta, like, shaking me, like, waking me up. He's like, bro, it's time to go back. And we had our patrol base set up down the road. So he shook me, woke me up, and I, like, stumble and, like, pack my shit up, throw it on the back of the quad, and, like, go cruising back into our patrol base. Get back there and just threw my shit down and just collapsed on the rack again. And I was out. And I woke back up and I was feeling better. I was like, yeah, I'm good, man. Like, I can do this, you know, like, I'm good. I got headaches and shit, but yeah, I'll be all right. You know, like, just fucking shake it off. Did that. And I took another blast later on in that trip too. And again, shake it off and just move on. Yeah. And it's just not a fucking thing.
Well, you know? What else are you going to do? You know, I mean, let's be realistic. Like, we talked about this a lot, but you're in combat, you're in a place and your buddies are counting on you. And what are they going to do? Send somebody fresh? Like, that's probably not going to happen. Your guys are just going to continue on one man down. Well, and you're, so it's sort of like once you're there, it's like it's not like a yellow.
I've got an element in contact. I've got an element in small arms fire and taking indirect fire. Yeah. Right. I've got a group of strung out commandos that I'm attempting to, like, cat wrangle. Yeah. You know, and I've got shit that needs done. Yeah. And all of that is in the back of your mind. Like, as fucked up as you are, like, all that's in the back of your mind. And by the way, if I say I'm too fucked up to keep on and you call in a bird, now what? Now I'm putting my guys' lives at risk that are taking indirect and direct fire. And everybody on that everybody bird. Else that's on the ground, everybody that's on the bird, everything that's going on. Or do I suck it up and just drive on? And because honestly, my problems are small compared to that. Yeah. They really are. Exactly. My problems are small compared to that.
Well, and that's, I mean, we're kind of wargaming right now, but what do you, so, you know, what do you do? Are you going to make the situation worse by saying, hey, I need dust off, I need to get out of here? Yeah. You know, are you going to compound it? Is that better than the worst case scenario on the ground, which is, you know, you eating shit and dying? Right. You know, and then you're not really a pressing concern. Well, if I got to get out of there eventually.
If I go down, I go down. But if I don't go down, then
you don't go down.
Then I don't go down.
Yeah. And that's, you know, future Matt's problem.
Yeah, that's future Matt's problem. That's not current Matt's problem.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Current Matt's problem is
just walking off the X so I can get my positions out.
Don't let my buddies die. And then you know, and then even after that operation though, you know, you get back to your patrol base. It's like, what do you do?
Go to sleep. That's all I cared about was I just like it wasn't even like I was like, I'm gonna lay down and go to sleep. It was like I face planted them out. Yeah. You know? And but yeah, so after we get done doing all this crap, we had flown out to some Middle East base to wait on a big rotator to take us back. Yeah. And I was talking to my buddy. I was like, dude, this is getting bad. Like, I'd noticed the eyesight problems and stuff like that when we were going out doing some night raids. And I was like, this is fucking bad. But I keep it to myself. I'm like, fuck it, dude. Yeah. Like, you know, like nobody likes to admit that they're broke. Yeah. Nobody likes to admit that they're broke. And So yeah, we got back to, I was talking to my buddy about it, like kind of like my little confidant that I had on the team. I was talking to him. I was like, dude, I think I'm fucked up. And he's like, you'll be all right, bro. He's like, yeah, just get checked out when we go back. I mean, you're still kicking. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm still kicking. Well, we got back to that base and I started having like these mad, crazy headaches. I was forgetting things. I was having trouble talking. And I was like, dude, I need to go check in the hospital here. He's like, bro, like the bird's going to be here in like a day. You'll be fine. Like, just wait. Just wait. And so I did. I waited, and then I got back to the States, and just immediately, like I'm checking in and I'm done. I went home for the night. I had a girl I was dating at the time. Like I met up with her and hung out with the boys, and that was when I knew something was wrong too. Because I went out and I had one beer that night. I'd had one drink that night, and it had kicked in the worst headache I had ever had in my life off of like one beer.
And that's not normal.
No, that's not right. I was just like, something's fucking wrong. Yeah. And I would get lost. I was getting lost. Like I'd be driving on the road, wouldn't know where I was going. I would lose things constantly. I would walk into a room and stand still. I went into a gas station one time to buy a pack of cigarettes. And I had asked the guy, I was like, dude, can I get a pack of, Camels or whatever it was I was smoking? Yeah. And when he had answered me back, it actually sounded like computer jargon.
Really?
Yeah, it sounded like digital noise coming over. And it had taken me for a loop. I was like, I'm sorry, what'd you say? Yeah. And he said it again, and it came in. I was like, no, one more time. And then it came in normal. But I would be able to think of things, but I wouldn't be able to speak them correctly.
Yeah, it took you a while, like a motor skills.
Yeah, it was weird. I was having all sorts of issues, and I was just like, this is fucked up, man. Yeah. And so, it was, and to me, that was something I look at, and I'm like, all right, well, I've got kids, I've got family I want to be there for, I've got all these other things.
And you're young.
Yeah, and the guy was like, hey, man, he's like, if you want out, we'll get you out. And I'm like, and I'm just sitting in a chair and I'm like damn near in tears because now I have somebody telling me, before it was me saying, I want to get out. Yeah. And now I'm at the point where I really don't want to get out.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm like damn near in tears with this guy. And he just stopped me. He's like, Matt, you've done enough, dude. Like, if you need to get out, like.
Yeah, tap out.
He's right.
Tap out. I was like, fuck it, dude, I'm out. Yeah. And that was it. I was like, I'm done.
So what did they end up diagnosing severe TBI?
So they took the TBI thing because it was the TBI doc that I had talked to about that, and they had gone and I'd gone in for my CAT scans, my brain scans, and stuff like that. So they're like, well, you didn't pass out on the objective like when you got blasted, so it wasn't a severe. Or I haven't looked in this in years. It wasn't the severe TBI because you haven't passed out, but there's also like the compounding injuries and everything else. And yeah. Lesions or anything? Fuck, I don't know.
Yeah.
Did you get a sear scan?
Yeah. I went in there for that.
So you got the real brain scan?
Yeah. He's like, you're looking good, bro. He's like, you're looking good. He's
cool.
Like, you'll be all right.
Awesome, man.
So and it was just a lot of recovery. Like I'd done a lot of physical therapy, a lot of retraining. Okay. Like relearned some motor skills. Like talking came back over time. Yeah. Eyesight still kind of sucks. I'm not going to lie. My eyesight still sucks. I was in and out of eye doctors trying to figure out what was going on with my eyes, like we were talking about. And they gave me a pair of glasses, and then every time I would get a prescription, it was like my prescription was changing. Right. And so I was like, well, fuck glasses. Like, it's just stupid. Money, Like everything just keeps changing, And yeah, I don't know. That was very weird for me.
Did you ever hear of stellate ganglion block? SGB?
Oh, is that the shot to the neck?
Yeah. So Paul had it, and we've known others that had it, life-changing.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
I can get you the contact info.
Yeah. And we can share or talk a little bit about it because it never hurts to kind of bring it up and everything. But, well, Paul, you're probably better qualified at doing this, but there's a specific physician who I guess kind of found it's been around, I guess.
Sean Mulvaney. Yeah.
Go ahead.
He's helped to invent the process. At least that's the way I understand it. And I haven't studied the history of it that much, but it's highly effective for people who've been in our line of work. It's really good for your anxiety response and your basically like that
fight or flight.
That alarm bell that's been going off in your head for the last 10 years. Yeah, like it can turn that off.
It's weird. My buddy told me because my buddy got it done. It's funny you guys bring this up because I was just talking to him the other day, and he's like, "Hey man, have you heard of this?" And I was like, "No, man." And he said he's got the contact to brag to do it. He said he went in and got it done, and he said it wasn't an immediate effect, but by the time he walked out of the hospital, he said it was like a night and day difference.
Yeah.
Well, we had a guest on here that's a family friend, and I've known this kid, for a long time frame, and Kyle's been on the show a couple times now. And Kyle went in, and his wife's a nurse, and she wasn't able to go in because it was coronavirus time period, this past year, late last year. But they went up to Maryland, where, the doctor's at, and go in his office and everything. And the doctor explains the procedure to him about what he's going to do. And he's like, do you want me to go ahead and go through with it? And he's like, Kyle's like, yeah, go ahead and do it. And Angela's waiting outside for him. And, Kyle shares his story on this episode that I'm talking about. But, he's talked with us a lot, even in private, outside of just what he shared on the podcast. It was life-changing at that moment when by the time he got down the elevator and got to his wife, the emotional relief, the feeling of just being like normal again came back.
Yeah, that's what I'm told.
Yeah. And it's still that way. And it varies based on individuals. I've heard of people who's had it 5 times, 10 times, those types of things. But, Kyle's question to Paul was, how long, what do you think it might last? And Paul goes, well, most of the time, it's about a year. And he goes, to get 1 year, it's worth it.
Yeah.
And then I'll take it 1 more year and, that type of thing. And so
and
that's huge.
It's not 100% durable, but it lasts a long period of time. And if I feel I need it again, I'll go back and get it. I mean, it's on the list.
Yeah.
Just like getting your teeth cleaned and everything else. Like, it's just something I'm going to do. And it's not going to solve your problems.
Oh, so it's...
But it's a step, it's just like physical therapy.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't erase an injury necessarily, but
it definitely
can help. It's one less thing that you got to worry about.
It's funny because after I had that suicide attempt, my buddy took me back on camp, and I had got back, and he had saw me sitting around one day, and I guess I had just had that look on my face of just being not all there.
Yeah.
And sitting outside smoking, and he walked up. He was like, "Matt, are you thinking about killing yourself?" I was like, "Not only am I thinking about it, but I definitely tried."
Holy cow.
And he was like.
The fact that he recognized that.
Yeah, and man, probably saved my life, and he'd grabbed me. He's like, come on, man, we're going to go talk. And so he had brought me in to the therapy office that was over there. And to me, it was weird because I had felt like that particular therapist, had no idea what the fuck he was dealing with. And I had felt more or less like a test tube subject to where, he's just like, all right, I've got this toy. I want to play with it. How do I play with it? And he's just poking and prodding and trying to find different ways to go about doing things. And I had gone through numerous, I had stayed in the entire time. I had stayed in therapy and tried to go through different routes and different things and just kind of stayed after it until I'd found one that I actually liked.
Yeah.
And that guy was huge. He was a huge game changer for me. And you always think there's something wrong with you. Mm-hmm. And then once you start reading and doing more studying and you start actually getting to people, the relationship with your therapist is almost like a marriage. You actually got to be able to get along and you got to be able to have the right things in that. And so I think 2 of the biggest things I learned going through it was the suicidal aspect of it, right? The way he explained it to me, which was just eye-opening to me, where I was like, holy shit, now that makes sense. There's not something wrong with me. That's just I think the way he explained it, he's like, Matt, if you want to go to Walmart right now, or you want to go to the PX, he's like, how many different routes do you know to get to the PX? Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, I know 3 or 4 different ways to get there. And he's like, no, what's the most effective route to get there? He's like, probably your straight line distance or whatever. And your brain comes up with different ideas and different thoughts on how to accomplish each objective that you come up with. And when you're going through a lot of pain and you're going through a lot of struggles, or, you feel disconnected from your family, you feel disconnected from your life, that's one of the options that your brain comes up with, and it's a perfectly natural human response that comes up with. Whether or not you act on that response, and then how you treat it is really where those things come from. And so your brain's actually coming up with these different options, and it'll pop up in people's heads, and they'll think that there's something wrong with them, and really there's not. Your brain's just presenting to you these different options that are coming out.
Yeah,
that was one of the eye-opening things for me that really made me go, oh no shit, yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense,
right?
Yeah.
That was one of the eye-opening things for me. And then the other thing that really made sense to me was if you look at human beings going about their daily lives, and you look at their threat levels assessments, the threat assessment levels, where they're at. They normally operate in some little norm, your soccer mom going to a grocery store. Right. She might get weirded out if, somebody follows her or comes up and her goes up a little bit and then it goes back down to the norm. And, and they, most humans tend to stay in this one little spot, and they go to the upper end of it and a lower end, but they stay in this healthy area, right? But when you start looking at combat and the different things you go to, you have now this new heightened level of response. And so you go outside of that norm up to now you're in this like, no shit, I might die.
Right.
By taking every step. Like I'd lived in a patrol base one time where we had months after living there, and it's not like it's something, it actually happened numerous times to where we had been living in a place and we had found either IEDs or mines within our own compounds after we had already cleared them and had already taken ones out.
Yeah.
And so it's not just like you're able to go back and relax, like you're in this constant state of, not to mention you're getting shot at every day, and so you're operating at this constant level. And so the nice thing is like going from the police side of the house to the military side of the house, right? And you can see like if you do like studies on police officers, like they go through a similar cycle, but they do it on a daily basis, and they have their safe place, which is in the house. They're on the street, and they go outside of that normal level, and they go to an upper level. Yeah. And then when they get home, they crash, and they go, instead of going back into that normal thing where they can communicate and stuff, it's their time to download. And so they end up going from that normal all the way down to the sub, and their families interpret that as, he's ignoring me or she's ignoring me. They don't want to talk to me. They're withdrawing, but what they're really doing is just toning out, and their body's resetting. Yeah. Right. And they do this on a daily basis. It's the cycle that cops go through. And when you look at it from a military aspect, we go through the same thing, only it's a much longer cycle. We're operating at that level a much higher time. And even when we get our downtime, we're really not, because in the back of our minds, we're preparing for things. And so when we get home and we crash, families always want to come up and they want to hug and kiss you, and they want to be excited, and they want to talk to you. And all you really want to do when you get home, and at least this is what I found when I was married, was I just want to be left the hell alone. Mm-hmm. I just want to like sit down and that's it, right? Yeah. Like I just need to chill. I need to check out. I need to do something, and you can talk to me. I'm not going to listen to what you're saying, but that's not something that's wrong with you. That's a subconscious response.
Do you still need that like on a regular basis?
Absolutely.
Like you're like, because it's funny, you were talking about it, and I kind of thought about it. Like I need a lot of downtime and alone time, and it's just it's draining. Like when we're done here, when I come down and I do these podcasts with Rob, and I stay at the house, and it's awesome, and I love you and Vicky, you guys are awesome. But then when I'm done, like, and you might have noticed after a whole day of podcasting, like I'm just gonna sit in my room with the door closed.
I'm kind of the same way.
I need my time alone.
It's exhausting.
I can explain this, right? And I can explain this. This is one of the things I like to talk about, right? I can explain this. So the reason why guys like us like to get together and tell war stories and sit down and talk is it triggers an emotional response in our brain. It actually takes us back just a little bit. Not to the extent where we were operating at, but it takes us back just a little bit to that, and it triggers a chemical response,
like
in
an
our brain.
endorphin,
right? And it releases it, and it brings you back up to that heightened state, right? When you start talking about these things, it brings you back up to that heightened state, and then when you get done, remember what I said, it's a cycle, and you go end up going back down.
Then you're going to crash hard, yeah.
And so it's not something that like you're necessarily doing wrong. It's just your body's natural response to it. And a lot of family members don't understand that aspect to where that extra space that we need when we do those things. Yeah. And they interpret that differently. And that's why you're starting to see some of these, in my opinion anyways, that's where you start seeing some of these marriages come apart, right? And then once these marriages start to fall apart, we look at it like we did something wrong. The family members think that they did something wrong, and there's this irreconcilable difference that ends up like building in between the two because they think they did something wrong. We think there's something wrong with us, when in reality, neither of us has done anything wrong whatsoever. We're just going through our basic life cycle, right? And then all of a sudden, these service members, they lose their family, and they're like, "Oh my God, I've lost my family, and I'm completely fucked up." Yeah. And so, how do we go about fixing that? We dive deeper into work.
Yeah.
Right.
The things that's most comfortable.
Right. And that's exactly what I did. I dove back deeper into work. I'm like, all right, well, now I'm divorced. I'm in group. I'm just going to deploy again. Fuck it. Yeah. And
then you go back. Easy choice to make.
And it's a very easy choice to make. And you go back, and
it's rewarding.
It's very rewarding because you're living at that high cycle, and then you come back home, and then you crash. And then what do you do to relieve that time? You go and you hang out with your buddies because it at least elevates you a little bit. You feel like you're doing good. You feel good about it when you're hanging out with your buddies, and then you go back and you crash again. Yeah. And you're going back to this regular cycle. Unless you understand how that cycle actually works, like
that's probably the best explanation, I think, in all the podcasts that we've done.
Right.
Of explaining that. I can totally, and for those who are not seeing this visualization, of seeing basically, a noise channel going across and such, that like you said in a chart where you see charts going up and down, and you've got the normal, what they call the normal pattern that's in the middle. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what you're describing here. And again, people understand a lot of things like, euphoric, that feeling of that high. And then people don't understand me now of how I am when I return back home, and we go through the explanations. but yet maybe they don't understand it in that visual graphic the way you just described that says, hey, listen, it's okay. There's going to be a moment where I'm going to come down, but I need to I'll level back up to normalcy again. And hopefully that's what occurs.
Right.
Is that you find that normalcy again, but a lot of people also long for that high.
Well, and here's the crazy part, right? So for police officers, for example, right, like their normal reset period is somewhere around 48 hours, something in the neighborhood of 48 hours. So when they're on their 4-day work week or they're out doing what they do, they really don't get that reset period, right? Because they get home, they don't have the chance to reset because they just go to bed, wake up, and do it again because it's shift work.
Yeah, and they've got family responsibilities, and more than likely,
and they do the same thing that we do. And I think there's a lot of parallels that we can look at in this neighborhood. And I think psychology needs to look at real deeply in this neighborhood. There's a lot of parallels. When I was married in the military, I would come home and I would be like, I'm passing off the finances to my wife. I'm passing off the children's responsibilities and the school role responsibilities. I'm passing all that stuff off to my wife because when I get home, I just want to download. And when I'm away, she's responsible for it anyways. And so all this starts going away, right? And so they interpret that as like some sort of disassociation, when in reality, your brain doesn't want to make any decisions. You're tired of making decisions. You're making life or death decisions on a daily basis, and your brain just wants to disassociate. It wants to let go. It wants to not handle it. And so even when they bring up something stupid and they're like, no, we really want your input on this, we get annoyed by it.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but like I would get annoyed by it. I'd be like, why are you pestering me? Like, this is petty crap. Yeah. Like, leave me alone. And we get annoyed by it. And that drives that wedge further and further and further, right? And then I think probably one of the biggest things that affects people, like in the military, is basically becoming one with their job, right? And I'll give you a prime example of this. Like when you were in Ranger Regiment, and people ask you, what do you do for a living? What do you say?
Yeah, I'm a Ranger.
I'm a Ranger.
Yeah, I am.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, and what did I say? Like, no, I'm a Green Beret.
Yeah.
Right? And, so, and that takes away
that identity, yeah. We talked about this before in another episode, yeah.
Right. You seriously, you identify with it and you start taking away those other things. Like if you go out and you talk to civilians about it, like, well, what do you do for work? I work in this field.
Right.
Not, I am an engineer or I am this.
Right.
Like, I am a Ranger. I am a Green Beret. Like, this is what I do. This is me. And so you lose all of those little things that go in the outside. Like, your friends become the ones from work. Your hobbies become sharpening your hobbies for work. Everything in your life revolves around it because you've become self-autonomous with that. And when you start losing those aspects of control, right? Like you identify like, no, I'm a Ranger. Well, then you realize that, you're a Ranger, but you're still almost like a pawn in some scheme, right? So like as much as you want,
100%.
Control over your own world, and then something happens that makes you realize like you end up being sniper bait or, like any of these other things, and those happen and you realize like, well, I am like one with this element. I don't have control over this element whatsoever. Yeah. And that's like us as men, like that is a very, very hard pill to swallow, that we don't have control over our own destiny, our own self, something that we've just self-identified with as our profession. And then, add on top of that, like now you're getting med boarded or you get out or you step on your crank because you don't understand what's going on in your life, because your wife left you, because you've disassociated with her, because neither of you understand how this cycle works, and then, you go out, and the military is very hard on drinking. A lot of guys cope with drinking, or we tell our war stories at the bar and we hang out. And that's why we like to hang out with other team guys or other Rangers.
And it's a mark of masculinity as well. And it's it's something you do culturally for acceptance. And it's encouraged in the military that you should drink. Don't get in trouble for it. But drink like a man.
Right.
But don't drink to excess.
Right.
But drink a lot because you're a badass.
Right.
But don't get so drunk that it becomes a problem. Right. You know what I mean? So it's like you're living this contradiction, and
you've lived the contradiction, and a lot of guys step on the cranks in the military doing that, and then they get kicked out. Yeah. So not only do they have this like massive cycle problem, right, that they're going through, but now they have an alcohol problem, and then they get in trouble for that alcohol problem, and then they lose what they self-identify as, and now they're lost. Yeah. And people are wondering like, why are we seeing these high rates of like veteran suicide that's going on right now? Even I don't even want to. I had a buddy commit suicide like 2 weeks ago to the day, like as we're sitting here 2 weeks ago to the day, and awesome role mentor for me. He was at the tail end of his career. Yeah, he's coming up and getting out. He was having marital issues. Like it wasn't a secret. He was having marital issues. But nobody saw it coming, and we wonder why like these things are happening. The military is like very good for preparing you for like battle, right?
Yeah.
But they are absolute shit at preparing your family or you for what's taking on afterwards. And it's almost on us to start that role. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, like, even if you're in the military, just to do, like, you do PMCS on vehicles, you know, before you take them out. You want to make sure your vehicle works, but we're not PMCSing ourselves.
I'm a big fan of that line of thinking.
Right.
If you go to the range in your workup before you go to deployment, and you shoot your rifle and it works flawlessly, you still take it to the armorer before you take that weapon overseas.
Right.
And if you come back and it worked flawlessly the whole time you were overseas,
Right.
you still turn it into the armorer so somebody will look at it so that you don't have a major malfunction when you need it the most. And a rifle is a relatively simple piece of equipment.
Right.
Compared to the human mind and the human body, and we're exposed to things that we don't even really understand everything that's happening in your mind when you're exposed to TBI. We're just now really starting to understand the real effects of PTSD, whatever you want to call it. And that's, you know, not to let anybody off the hook, but the Army doesn't know either.
No, and that's,
I mean, they don't really understand that, like, how valuable decompression is and how much money. Because let's be real, you have to be pragmatic, right? The Army, the military, they're for fighting wars, winning, and they have a budget to do it on,
right.
And you can say what you want about that budget, but there is a bottom line, and it may seem like, okay, well, why would we give a ranger, SF guy, a platoon sergeant, or even a private? Why would we give him 2 weeks off, 3 weeks off, 4 weeks off after a very stressful event or after a long deployment? That's money lost. Well, not if that private or that soldier or that service member is going to get a DUI because they needed to blow off some steam and they've got pressure built up, and not if they're going to kill themselves, and not if they're going to do something bad and their family falls apart and then they leave because now their situation has changed and they can't continue service. All that training's lost, time's lost. And so financially,
and here's one of the crazy things. I just got this from a psychologist at the VA like 3 weeks ago, right, as I was talking to him. They had put me on like a separate program, and I go into and it's like the military is very bad about it, and the VA is very bad about it, to where if I go and I tell my tale to you, that should be it. It should be documented. Like, this is everything. These are all the questions I answered. This is where I'm at in life, and these are all the things I've been through. But it's not like that in the military. Every time you get switched to a new department or you go to a new doctor, they have all these check the block questions that I have to go through. And I lost my shit with this doc, and I was like, look, bro, like, I hate for being short with you, you know, but I don't know how many times I've rehashed all of this shit, and it's getting a little fucking old. Yeah. And he tried nailing everything down to like one specific event for like a trigger. Yeah. And I'm like, why is it you guys do that? Like, let me ask you a question. Like, why is it you guys are doing that? Yeah. Like, what fucking sense does that make? You know, like, I've ran out of like fingers and toes for how many buddies that have been like killed overseas or have committed suicide back home. Yeah. I can't give you a specific event. Yeah. I can't tell you how many people I've seen like blown to bits, how many like I've cut arms off dudes. Well, you know what I mean? Like, I've done some wild shit in my day, and you want to sit here and you want to try to get me to get it all back. Why is that? Yeah. And it turns out, he's like, look, dude, he's like, a lot of this stuff is based off like civilian psychology. Yeah. A lot of it's based off civilian psychology, where you get like one person that gets in a car accident, now they're afraid to drive, or they get raped and they're afraid to be, you know, around men, or they're for love, or, you know, whatever the case may be. Yeah. It's a single event. And so they're all trying to nail it down to a single event.
You didn't get in 15 car crashes in 1 year time frame.
Right. Yeah. So where are these doctors, you know, that have actually like devoted it and done their studying to it? And why aren't they leading the charge on it? Because I know they exist.
Well, there's not that many of them, you know, and that's the other thing, is how do you get the resources to the end user? Yeah. You know, like, it is easy to blame the system, and the system's fucked up. And I agree with you. Every time I go in and they're like, when I registered for a new VA hospital, and I go in and they say, you have to do a post-deployment health assessment. I'm like, lady, I haven't deployed since 2012. So what the hell are you talking about?
And I know you did one when you got back that year.
Yeah, I did.
I'm pretty sure I did one when I got back that year.
I'm like, well, why don't you have that document? And they say, they just call it that, blah, blah, blah. It's boilerplate. I'm like, okay. So I get the thing. And one of the questions on your intake is how many people you lost in your unit. And I just wrote, fuck you.
Yeah.
Look it up. Like, yeah. Are you kidding me? How many people get that piece of paper and then they turn around and they walk out of that office, and they never come back, and they don't receive care, and they're just like, you know what, I'm going to gut it out.
And I'll tell you one of the other questions that absolutely pisses me off that I've been asked like numerous times, like over the years. Like, I'd come back from rotation and I'm like, yeah, dude, like, I just need to offload. Like, my fucking buddy got killed and I'm very fucking upset about this. Yeah. One of the absolute worst questions I hate being fucking asked is, was he a good friend?
Really?
Yeah. Wow. You know how many times I've been asked like whether or not they were good friends?
What's the difference?
Good fucking question.
Yeah.
Good question. If anything, they're closer than your family. And I've talked about this before too. Like I have bawled my eyes out for some dudes overseas. Bawled my fucking eyes out for dudes overseas.
Yeah.
When I lost my mom back in October, I was just like, okay. You know, like I get it. Like she lived a good life. It's a natural death. Like it's a perfectly normal thing. But there's nothing more tragic to me than like losing a buddy overseas.
Well, that's supposed to happen. Unfortunately, you know, your relatives, especially your parents, your grandparents, they get old, they die. That's normal. What's not normal is burying 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds.
A lot.
Christopher Thomas he had just had his 18th birthday, youngest ranger in the regiment, died in Afghanistan.
Right.
That's not normal.
No.
And that you start tallying these things up until you've got 15, 20, 30, 40, 100, some people 100 friends like that. And they're in their 30s, they're in their 40s. And you're talking about a lifetime of loss and a lifetime of grief, and it's all condensed into a few decades. It's not normal.
No, it's not.
Your reaction should not be normal. And it's really, really frustrating that every time you go and see somebody in a new department at the VA, and this happens in the hospital too, they give you their PCL-5 checklist, and they've got their little how many people died in your unit checklist. And it's like, well, how many times are you going to make me relive this shit?
Yeah.
You know, or you, like if you file for, after the fact, you get out of the military and you file for PTSD, they have a form and they're saying, well, what was the event?
Right.
Well, shit, man. And this is what's really frustrating about this is like, and this is real world. This has happened. You will be diagnosed with PTSD by a grief counselor or somebody in the mental health wing of the VA. They write those 4 magic numbers in your record and they say, this is what you got. And hopefully they come up with some kind of treatment plan or something that they're going to help you get through this stuff. But you're entitled to your disability for that. Mm-hmm. So you go and file, and they say, well, what is it? Like, well, shit, maybe I don't know. Maybe I just walked in the office and the guy said so. Mm-hmm. Like, your doctor's diagnosed this. Now, I have to come up with the reason why. Like, and I'm poking myself in the chest right now, like, I'm a grunt infantryman.
Right.
You know, they're the psychologist. Why do I have to come up with it?
So why am I explaining this?
It's a really frustrating process.
And on top of that, then they, you know, the VA tries to tier everything off.
Yeah.
You know, and they try to tier it when truthfully, most guys are not going to tell you the whole truth.
No.
They're not. When they sit down and they talk, they're not going to tell you the whole, like I'm a big fan that the VA just needs to look at it and be like, you know what, you've got PTSD. There's no way of knowing how truly jacked up in the head you are. They need to write that off. I'm sorry. You like when you send people to war, you automatically write off how much ammunition we're going to be spending, how much money we give to the local population, nation rebuilding, all of this other crap, you know, the equipment move, the logistics. You know, we were spending like $40 in Iraq at one point just for a plate, you know, is what we were paying that company. But yeah, they want to like nickel and dime our vets for what they're going through. Mm-hmm. Like you mean to tell me you can't afford a couple $1,000s a month for a vet when you paid $40 for a meal plate? You know, like. Well,
and the discretionary budget for 2020, I believe it was $96 or $98 billion for Veterans Affairs.
Yeah, I saw that come out.
And I believe for 2022, it's over 120. And I know it's over $100 billion.
Right.
Dollars.
And they need to start honestly, they need to start paying it out because maybe, just maybe, you know, in my personal opinion, like we have got the Afghan military to a point where they're make or break. You know, like what else could we do for those people? We've trained them, we've equipped them, we've done everything we can. We take them out, we still provide like we're doing all sorts of shit for the Afghan military, and they're either going to shit or get off the pot. At what point is it no longer our problem?
Yeah.
You know, like honestly, at what point is it no longer a problem?
That's a valid question.
But if our government is willing to sit there and keep sending us over there, then you have accepted the financial responsibility of taking care of those same vets that have
long-term
6, 7, 8 rotations. Yeah. Like if that's something that you need to factor into the budget, period, end of discussion, and stop putting us through this ringer. You know, we didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah. And we have a 2 decades long case study with live humans.
Right.
So we have the data.
Yeah.
We should. Let's do something with it.
Yeah.
Right.
Like we've seen the effects, the long-term effects. When you talk about 60,000 veteran suicides since what was it, 2006? Something like 2004?
Dude,
in 10 years.
But when you guys just outlined this, though. It may be 19, 20 years in the making here, going on 20. But every time, if you guys go in and they're doing the discussion around regurgitation of the first, what the first guy did, and you've done that 20 times, and you do that to every veteran that goes in there, you're not really making progress.
No, they're not.
So to your question is, who the hell is out there that can actually answer some of these questions and get us beyond this point? Or if there is somebody out there, they're few and far between because they're still trying to get through their first 20, 50 people, getting beyond the first series of questions.
I know I'm not the only, I've got, 4+ years in combat, right? And I've been seeing counselors for years. I know I'm not the only one that's been doing that. Mm-hmm. So where are the people coming to guys like us? And I know I'm not the most combat experience. I know I'm not the guy that has done the most talking. But where are the people that are pulling this data and looking at it? And why aren't we aware that it's even going on if it's something that's going on?
Yeah, it raises a lot of questions. Like when you walk into any VA, and if you move, you start a new one, or you get a new provider or whatever, they give you your PCL5 checklist or whatever. And it's like, why don't you just ask me if I've filled this out before?
Yeah.
And what'd you do with the last one?
Yeah.
And that's the really frustrating thing.
Yeah.
So, and the PCL5 isn't a great example because you should redo that one, but some of the other ones where you're talking about specific events.
Right. When I had first walked into the VA, they were shocked to learn the amount of medications that I was on and how long I'd been taking them for. For some reason, when I got out, that is just not something that transferred over. And I was like, look, man, I've been on these meds, high doses of them. For years, and if you guys don't refill my shit, I'm going to start going through some serious withdrawals.
There's going to be a problem.
You got to titrate that down. Yeah.
I was popping 300 milligrams of Zoloft overseas on my last trip on a daily basis. You know what I mean?
And all of a sudden you're going cold turkey.
And now I'm going to go cold turkey. No, so I'm going to the ER, and they're like, all right, well, it's a month out for your next appointment, and we can give you a 10-day limit right now, and then you got to come back to the ER and get some more, and it's just asinine.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing that's frustrating is the system. It's our fucking system. It's our Veterans Affairs, and it's not set up for us. They're not open on weekends. They're not open after hours.
Right.
We get out of the military, even if you do 20 and retire, you're still in your peak earning years. You have to go back to work, and I know the pension sounds great. It's not much. It's a pittance, not a pension.
Yeah.
So how the hell? And we know, especially in soft, the divorce rate is higher than the national average,
right,
by 3. And so I've got to go out and work. I'm in a new career field, so it's not like I have a lot of leeway with my new employer necessarily.
No. Nope.
I'm probably divorced. I probably am a single parent, and I'm trying to make that work. And probably
medicated up.
And I probably have my wife in another state, so there's that added layer of complexity. And I'm probably trying to go to school because my military education wasn't so great. So I have all of that going on, and you can only get me in on business hours. I got to see a primary care, to get a referral to another place, to go see a specialist. And he wants to talk to me before he can even order the imagery that I already know I need because I'm trained in combat medicine.
Right.
I'm like, okay, go get an x-ray first. I have soft tissue damage. We know this because of our experience in the military, that an x-ray doesn't show soft tissue damage. So now we're jumping through all these hoops, and now it's 4 or 5 appointments to get imagery.
And that's 5 workdays.
And that's just
to get started, just so you can get referred to who you need to go see. And you already know you need to go see this guy.
Well, then imagine walking in to go see somebody, and they say, basically, we've got to start the discussion all over again.
Exactly.
Tell me again, what was the single event?
Exactly.
Tell me,
Exactly.
Oh, was he a good friend? And I'm just saying, you think about that. We're talking about it, but I mean, you really, if you listen to this and you're really thinking about it, how you can see why people just lose it, and they're frustrated.
They lose faith in the system,
and lose total faith in the system.
And now they're out there floating on their own, and they don't understand anything going on because out of all those 5 appointments, nobody even explained some of the simple, basic things that I talked about with you guys.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the other thing: we're all senior NCOs,
right?
You think Private Snaplink knows that it's not supposed to be this way, or does he just feel like somebody shit down his neck for his service?
That's exactly what.
And that's why he ends up.
Well, his family feels the same way.
Parking lot. I had this happened this week. I went to the VA with a friend. They needed me to go and kind of help them navigate this process because it's a complicated process. And there was going to be. It was kind of like your situation. There's a medicine that if you get off it, you need to titrate down. And the VA said, no, you're going cold turkey because they do substance abuse screening for fucking everything. And this person tested positive for alcohol. This is an adult American
over 21
human being.
Right.
And they're like, you tested positive for alcohol, and that violates a policy that nobody knows about. Nobody knew.
Because you weren't supposed to be drinking alcohol with said medication.
No, not even the case.
Really?
It's a controlled substance, so the VA, to cover their own ass.
You are shitting me.
You are not allowed to consume alcohol ever, or you don't get your medicine. And so, I mean, I can go into the details about, how preposterous is that? And the conditions of receiving controlled substance in the VA is that you sign a substance abuse contract.
You are shitting me.
And the tests that they give you to screen you is substance abuse screening. So, for one, you're being treated like a drug addict. We know that you've been honorably discharged under good terms because you have VA care. So you obviously are not a drug addict. Or I shouldn't say that. You have a track record of passing drug tests.
You're at least
and
a
not
decent
doing
human
drugs.
being.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like we could start under the presumption that I'm not a drug addict, right? And then go from there. Maybe do some other kind of assessment. Two, in your medical records, you have, if you have this medications long term, a track record of being screened for substance abuse. So God forbid somebody gets that's not in the medical profession and doesn't understand that that's standard, or that doesn't mean that you have a drug problem, because that looks pretty bad. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And let's face it, it's just a matter of time before the VA is breached, just like Martin Army Hospital was and OPMF was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So now,
Yeah.
What if you have business you're executive level, Rob, you got business in Singapore and you're trying to go there, and your competitor finds out about this breach and they find out that information, and now you've been screened for substance abuse. Singapore's not going to let you in.
No.
Yeah.
They have a zero tolerance policy. And people don't understand the ramifications of this, and the doctors don't understand that. So anyhow, this person's trying to get their medication. They say, okay, fine, I'll come in. I'll do the substance abuse screening again. I'll pee in your little cup. I'll sign your silly contract that I was supposed to sign years ago. Or I should rephrase that the VA was supposed to have them sign years ago before they even prescribed it.
Yeah, the VA was supposed to have you sign.
Yeah, exactly. And don't forget that if you're listening. You have already fulfilled your obligation to Veterans Affairs, so don't let them make you feel like you owe them anything. So they go in. The contract cannot be signed because it's digital, which raises the question, well, if it's a digital contract, why do I have to be there?
Right.
Right? Well, it's just on digits. It's not actually digital.
Because fuck you, that's why.
Yeah, because fuck you, that's why. It's like they're so backwards they can't fix their tech to get this thing signed, so it can't be done. And
wait, but there's technology out there. We do it all the time as signing
contracts. Have you been on a government computer?
Of course.
Do you know how complicated?
So long story short, this person can't get their medication. The effects of withdrawal are starting to take place. This person has adult responsibilities like school, family, work, things that we have to do to survive and live and be successful. And the clock's ticking. It's been ticking. And the VA says, well, maybe come back tomorrow and you can figure it out. And by the way, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get this medication. So now you're in physical anguish.
Yeah.
You're having physical effects from withdrawal. You know what I mean? And so, this person comes out to the parking lot and we're sitting in the truck like veterans do. We're sitting in the truck and I'm like, thank God I'm here. And we both said, like, this is why it happens. This is why veterans leave the VA, sit in the parking lot and blow their fucking brains out. Because this, you know what I mean? And
no, it's 100% true. And the place that, the one place that you should be capable of relying on, like, all right, I've got this. It's supposed to transfer over and it's going to take care of me. And it doesn't.
Well, and the volume of people that are seen, I know we're getting really down a rabbit hole with VA and stuff, but you would think that the volume of people that are coming through those doors and the cases are very similar, that there would be a faster solution already.
You would think.
You would think, but I mean, to flip to the other side of the coin, you're standing in line to get your labs and you've got a guy who's 25 who's just got med-boarded out of the Army or got out after his 4-year term and he's connected. Yep. You got a guy who's in his 80s or 90s. Yep. He served in Korea or World War II. You got Vietnam. This guy's dealing with Agent Orange and God knows what else kind of funky shit he got exposed to. You got the Gulf War vets, and then you've got, people like the Coast Guard just dealing with military sexual trauma or who knows. So the problem is large and it's very, very complex, and I look at my slice of the pie, my part of the problem that affects me, and it seems very straightforward.
But you can't boil the. I hear what you're saying, but I guess the way I would look at this whole thing is that you can't boil the ocean. You've actually got to take each of those cases and those types of situations and deal with those individually and assign people that can actually resolve or figure out a way to mitigate and resolve those issues.
Why is this not outsourced to the private sector at this point?
Well, that's a great question.
Well, here's what I would love.
That infrastructure already exists.
It does.
So why are we trying to reinvent the wheel? If they were to take the amount of money that they're spending on the VA and just be like, you know what, we're going to outsource you private.
They don't even have to outsource it. They just take that little blue card that you get that says you're service connected, and it's now like a punch card. You go to whatever doctor you want, and you take the majority of the VA that's not specialty stuff like TBI and facial reconstruction and the things that the VA is really good at it.
Yeah.
And I just go wherever I need to go.
Yeah.
Because I'm a smart, self-determining, self-possessed human being. And then my provider just bills the VA.
They flip the bill.
You know, just it's a medical billing center. And build that, do it that way, because I mean, in the last year, I've gotten more help from an athletic trainer at Exos at the Andrews Institute that I found through, friends of mine, and it was funded by benevolent organizations. Thank you, Eagle Fund, and thank you, Ranger Lead the Way Fund, for doing that for me, and Warrior Care. Yeah. They did it. And I've been trying to get these things done at the VA for 5 years. And, as far as mental health, I get that outside of the VA.
I don't blame you.
And still at ganglion block. Thank you very much for doing that for me. I can't remember the name of the foundation that did it, but I know who I need to go see. I know what I need.
Yeah.
I don't need to go have 16 appointments. I talked to my primary care after 6 weeks at the Andrews Institute at Exos doing physical therapy and training. And his suggestion was that I do traction in the form of hanging by my feet. And I'm like, dude, it's not 1950. I just trained with the guys who are training the guys that are going to the NFL for the draft.
Right.
And they said I need dry needling. So I appreciate your input, but hanging by my feet isn't going to fix a shoulder problem that I've had for 15 years. Thank you. Why are you trying to input? You're a primary care general practitioner. And and that's the thing. We need professionals that are focused in their field. I shouldn't be seeing the same doctor as a World War II veteran. And
ones that aren't and I'll tell you what, too, ones that just aren't overworked to the point where...
Exactly.
I had to... No shit, I'll tell this story, I don't care. I had a no shit problem with the VA 2 weeks ago after my buddy killed himself. I was like, I need to talk to somebody. I had an appointment set up. I was like, thank God I have this.
Yeah.
And I was sitting in a parking lot waiting to get my haircut because COVID, so now everything's over the phone. And so I'm sitting in a parking lot and I'm talking to this guy on the phone, and he's like, well, what's going on? I was like, dude, I seriously feel like my life is just falling apart right now.
Yeah.
He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I've got this new career going on that hasn't really started paying off yet. My mom just died, and I've got a buddy that just killed himself. I was like, this is a problem. This shit fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, well, don't you feel like maybe you're just going through some sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy? I was like, excuse me, what did you just say to me?
Yeah.
And he's like, don't you feel like you're just going through, maybe it's just self-fulfilling, and I was like, dude, you've got to be shitting me right now. What part of this is my fault? I was like, you fucking explain to me what part about my mom dying is my fault. You explain to me what part about, my buddy killing himself is my fault. You explain to me how any of this is my fucking fault, dude. I was like, you know what? Jeez. You and me, we're fucking done. I was like, I'm firing you. I want a new, I was like, I straight up told the guy over the phone, I was like, I'm fucking firing you. I want a new counselor. This is bullshit, and I want to talk to your boss.
Yeah.
I called his boss. He was like, fine, you want his number? And then I got on Instagram, and I put it out on Instagram, and this is the power of social media. I absolutely love social media. I was fucking livid, man. Yeah. And I had contemplated whether or not I put this out there, and I was like, you know what, this is BS. This is exactly why people go into a parking lot and they shoot themselves in the freaking head. Yeah. And I had gone off on the guy. I was like, do you realize if I had had I not had all the previous counseling and stuff that I had already been through, where I'd learned that no, this shit isn't my fault, and your job as a counselor is just sometimes to be a freaking punching bag, verbal punching bag. And I was like, dude, had I not been through everything and understand resiliency and all this other crap, I might have been that guy that just popped himself in the freaking dome. And I got livid. I was like, dude, how are you practicing medicine at this point in time? You could have very well killed somebody by saying some stupid ass shit like that. And I was like, I want to talk to your fucking boss. This is bullshit. And then I went on and I posted on my Instagram story about exactly what I just explained, and everybody was like, this is BS. Within 10 minutes, I had a guy from the ER at that particular VA write me And he was like, hey, man, I'm a doc in the ER. I just spoke with the head medical professional.
Yeah.
Or the head psych professional in the ER, and this is not the first time this has happened. And he's rounding up a flagpole right now to go kind of crush this problem.
Awesome.
After I got that message, that doc called me back, almost felt like he was trying to save face on the subject.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, this is bullshit, dude. Like, this is unreconcilable. You should not, I don't care if you're having a bad day, don't show up to work. I'd have rather had you cancel your appointment or push it off to somebody else. Like, that is just freaking BS.
Yeah.
Well, his boss called me back like 3 days later after I left him a message. His boss calls me back. And I'm like, look, man, like, I had a decent relationship with him beforehand, but this is crap.
Yeah.
This is BS. Like, not only do I want another provider, but like, you guys need to figure this out, because that guy could have just easily caused a veteran to off himself.
That's the thing. If the person calling him, if that was their Hail Mary, their last resort, and it wasn't you,
Yeah.
Right.
then they say, okay, well, that was my last resort. That was as far as I'm willing to go. And then they go and they press the button and they're gone.
And the guy's boss is like, well, is this a one-time deal or is it like a repeated thing?
Does it matter?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And I told him, I was like, no, this is a one-time deal, but like, I'm not going to lie to you. This is a one-time deal, but I mean, this is a big freaking deal.
Yeah. Do you realize what one time can do to Paul's point, and what we're talking about here?
And do you think that guy
the ramifications?
I guarantee you that guy didn't get
He
fired.
got a reprimand probably, which is not necessarily, maybe a firing may not necessarily need to happen. I mean, we could argue that
Retraining,
right,
something like that. Yeah.
But something needs to occur here. Is he in the right profession or the right field of counseling individuals?
There's no triaging, and there's no sorting of veterans either. Like,
No.
Like if you don't know the difference between a Ranger and a Green Beret, maybe you shouldn't be counseling them,
Right?
Until you get some kind of training on it. If you don't know what an ERB is and how to read it, because we've got unique problems compared to somebody who did 4 years and is a victim of military sexual trauma.
Totally different.
Like, that person has very specific needs that aren't going to be translatable to me. I had a similar experience with you. I was seeking grief counseling at the VA, and I'm talking to this guy, and he knows I'm a sniper, and I was talking about my buddy Michael Jankowicz and how much guilt I have because I didn't get to tell him how much I cared for him and I loved him and what a good friend he was before he passed. And the guy's like, and I was also talking about another friend of mine who had killed himself, and I told the doc, like, man, if he would have just called me, like, then I would be satisfied. Like, just call your buddy before you decide to make a rash decision, like pulling the trigger. Look, and I even said that, like, it's not so that I can save your life. I'd like to do that, but call and say fucking goodbye.
Yeah.
Motherfucker.
Yeah. Seriously.
And if you still want to press a button, it's your right. But fucking call me first.
Yeah.
And that's what I was trying to express to him. And he says to me, who's a fucking Ranger sniper, he's like, you're just one person. You can't save lives. You can't save lives. I'm like, dude, I saved these people's lives in combat. That was my job. I understand what you're saying. I know I'm not responsible for saving everybody's life.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm trying to do here. But, like, there was such a huge disconnect from the reality that I know and this, counselor sitting in his chair with his legs crossed and his little leather patches on his corduroy jacket. And I'm like, dude, you've never done a push-up. Like, how are you going to sit here and tell me I can't save someone's life? Like, that was my business.
Yeah, and you want to hear something else that's fucked up? Like, the reason I'm actually on podcasts and stuff is because I was talking to a buddy about this shit that was going through this stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, you need to get out there and you need to talk to people. And he's like, talking to you is specifically what got me off the ledge.
Yeah.
And for that counselor to sit there and tell you that's complete and total bullshit. You know how many lives you probably saved just by doing this podcast alone? You have absolutely no idea. You have absolutely no idea. It's like the guy that walked up afterwards that lost, like Tink Tink. When Tink Tink walked up, you have no idea the impact you make on people.
Yeah. Well, I do know because I had a first sergeant, and Jim Anderson, if you're listening, like he saved my life.
Right.
Because we came back from a particularly shitty deployment, and this was, the guy tatted up, could kick your ass, was just a hard charging Ranger that, feared by all, respected by all, and total badass. And he got in front of the company and was like, I'm kind of fucked up, and these are my problems. And I've got them because of this line of work, and I've got them because I've ignored them for a long period of time, and now I'm seeking counseling and doing this, that, and the other thing.
That's awesome.
And it was a light bulb. I'm like, well, shit, if this god of a war is having issues, like I need to go and talk to somebody,
right?
Because I'm not on his level and I'm going through the shit too,
right?
And that's what started my journey, seeking mental health and trying to like take care of myself and do self-care and really looking myself in the mirror. And if he hadn't said that, who knows,
right?
You know, who knows? I probably would have just drank myself to death, like I was already trying to do.
Oh, I couldn't even imagine. I couldn't even imagine what would have happened to me had my buddy not sat down next to me.
Yeah,
I couldn't imagine.
And that's the thing, you know. So you go and you see these people who are supposed to be mental health professionals, and they don't get what we consider to be the basics, you know. And it's tough.
Yeah,
you know, it's tough to swallow.
And they're not even experts in that particular field. Right,
very
like
often,
you would think that the guy that I had sat down and I had been funneled into is going to be, you know, some post-traumatic stress expert coupled with TBIs to understand the intricacies of all these different things, of multiple deployments, everything going in, and be able to explain to you how, you know, just basic things. But instead, I've got some guy that's on the other end of the phone being like, well, was he a good friend? Like, what's the one specific
dude,
event?
it's a good thing this is a
like,
phone call and not in person.
Like, I should not be counseling a counselor. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is fucked up.
Yeah.
Like,
you know, I think that maybe what we're talking about too is it's going to take individuals who have been through this, that actually go through that profession to actually come back and help, because we know an individual who went through similar types of trauma, both post-traumatic stress and military sexual trauma, who went back to school to get a psychology degree, and for the purpose of helping. And so you think that you see people who are like that, and you also see people who have gone through traumatic brain injury and serious post-traumatic stress, who are going through training to become doctors now, to be able to help people deal with, you know, the stellate ganglion block, or provide that.
Right.
So maybe it's going to take more of us than going and choosing those types of professions to be able to come back and heal thy own kind of thing, you know, and help one another.
You know, it's funny, like, as you say that the one counselor that I actually connected with that had that way of explaining suicidal thoughts to me, that guy that I particularly connected with was a Marine Corps infantry officer that did the surge, or not the surge, that did the first initial push into Iraq.
Oh, yeah.
So he got it.
Yeah.
You know, when I was able to sit with him and like, he got it. Like, why do we not have more of these conversations with these people, or why are they not?
We need to recruit from within.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's a start, you know, and you'll also, when you encounter these problems at the VA, they have to be addressed, you know, and every single time. And the way to do that is you call the White House hotline. It's on the VA's website. You just go to va.gov and there's a search bar. You type in White House hotline, and the purpose of that hotline is solely to drive change. And it's a VA system. It's not the best. I've called it. I was hung up on. I called it another time and I said, would you like to take a survey after you talk to your your customer service person or whatever? And I said, sure, I'll take the survey after the phone call. And it went straight to the survey. So I rated them poorly because I didn't get to talk to anybody, but the hotline is there. The system is semi-functional, you know, so you got to call it and you got to, you know, explain what went wrong. And that's the only way it's going to change. You know, if you just say, this fucking sucks, and you go sit in your truck, or you go back to the house and you drink a bunch of whiskey and say, fuck it, I'm going to gut it out, then the next guy that goes in there might not do that. He might only make it to the truck. So, you know, that's one way. And then the other way that you do it, like if you're, like in the situation I was describing, where I had a friend who was going to who already had an interruption in their medication. If your doctor's not helping you, and like very often happens, you can't get your patient advocate on the phone because they're overworked in many cases, and it's hard for them to be able to pick up the phone, or it's hard for them to answer emails, then you call the Veteran Crisis Line. It's funny because when you call the VA on their main number, it says if you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, call the Veteran Crisis Line, but that is not solely for suicide. It's for a crisis. And if you're having an interruption in medication, if you're seeking mental health and you can't get it, if you need care because, you know, like I was last year, your dominant arm is numb and you can't use it, and you can't get imagery for months and months, which is not a tenable situation, you call that number, call the Veteran Crisis Line, and explain the problem, and explain that nobody else will help you. And, you know, just be honest. And I've had to do that many, many times for myself and for people that I'm trying to help navigate the system. So the answer's there. It's not ideal, but That's what we have right now.
I don't think a lot of people knew that crunch was like.
I didn't even know that was a thing. And I've heard it on the phone when I called the VA to like refill meds.
Well, it should be, you should always call your patient advocate first. If you're not happy with your care, you're not getting what you need. But, if nobody else is going to listen to you, that's a crisis. If you're not getting your medication, if you're not getting care, if your body's breaking down, if you're not able to do your job and take care of your family and pay your bills and be responsible and live your life, that's a crisis. And that's what that hotline's for. And those people care. They will help. You may get hung up on. Then I know the National Suicide Hotline. If you call that, 5 times out of 7 I've been hung up on, whether I'm calling for myself or I'm calling on behalf of someone else. So, it's not perfect, but...
Well, I hope that also more veterans end up or continue going into public office in order to help drive change from a legislative standpoint. Maybe even,
it's so hard to even do that. It is so hard to even do that. When you look at the amount of money it takes to run for office.
Yeah.
Like, where's a guy like me get funding? I would love to run for public office. Where's a guy like me get funding for that?
You might get some now.
Maybe. I dropped a lot of F-bombs. Like nobody likes that Donald Trump mentality. But, that's not even mine. Like, I'm a constitutionalist at heart. Like, I believe in the Constitution. If it doesn't fit in the Constitution, like, what's it doing here? But, it's so hard for these veterans to get out there and get into public office to be able to do those things.
It's hard for anybody, but you're right, especially veterans. And then, of course, there's always a stigma that kind of goes with even being a veteran.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So,
and we stigmatize our civilian counterparts because we have a bad experience with 1 or 2 of them. You know what I mean? If you go to the VA and you have a bad doc and you just say, well, fuck all the docs at the VA.
Yeah.
And that quickly extends to, well, fuck all the civilians because I had a bad experience with one boss or this and that. Look, people are shitty. But you got allies out there. People want to help you. And, look up the foundation that has your unit name on it.
Yeah.
And give them a call and see what they can help you do and see what you can help them do because they need help with all kinds of stuff. So,
Matt, we could probably go on for another 3 more hours, and there's still so much that we could still cover.
I know.
So, if nothing else, we'll have to get back together again in the future and do that. I just want to thank you for coming all this way.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me. It's been a good time.
Yeah, likewise. Definitely enjoyed it. Appreciate you.
No, I appreciate you guys. Like, it's been great. Thanks for dinner last night.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed that.
No lie.
Yeah, that was cool. We don't always get to hang out with our guests.
Yeah, that was nice. It was I'm not going to lie. It was kind of awkward when I first showed up, and they're like, well, we can't talk. And I'm like,
Rob was just generally awkward.
Why am I here? And so what did we talk? We talked politics and a couple other things. But like, I am here to hang out.
Wait, I'm a genuinely awkward person?
You're just super awkward. You make everybody feel weird.
Whatever.
No, I'm fucking with you, man.
No, but it's so funny because I told the story of, a lot of us are in the podcasting world. You end up not wanting to hear that information until you get behind the microphone because what will end up happening is I'll say something like, hey, Matt, you remember you told me? And it's not nearly as funny. It's not,
Same, man.
But yeah, it was good, man. I did hear you telling a couple of stories. So I was telling my wife and I was telling Paula, like, hey, remember Darby, remember to remind me. We got to talk about the leprechaun.
The leprechaun's a good story.
Well, we're coming up on leprechaun time here soon. So you'll be right in memory lane here in about another 30 days or so.
Oh, beautiful.
A couple
I can't
weeks.
wait. Green beer. Who doesn't love green beer? Turns your poop green and everything. Who doesn't love green poop?
Safe travels to you, brother.
Hey, thank you, sir. Appreciate you guys.